We often hear that psychoeducation is a significant part of learning to thrive for a healthier mental well-being. Moreover, psychiatrists and therapists often talk about psychoeducation, but what does it mean? Is it really useful for everyone? In particular, how will the knowledge of psychoeducation benefit special educational needs teachers? Well, we at SEAMEO SEN are definitely honored to be the platform in providing the steps and techniques to better understand what psychoeducation is all about and how can special educational needs teachers apply the knowledge to treat, manage, and cope with mental health issues. Assalamualaikum and a very good morning. On behalf of the Training and Consultation Division of SEAMEO SEN, to participants from Malaysia, Thailand, Philippines, Brunei, Indonesia, and Vietnam, selamat datang and welcome to today's training session entitled Psychoeducational Approaches for Supporting Students with Learning Disabilities with the one and only Associate Professor Dr. Mariam Al-Junib, Principal Specialist Education Psychology from the Ministry of Education, Singapore. Thank you for joining us today. I am also pleased to announce that these 3-day sessions are broadcasted live via SEAMEO SEN's Facebook and YouTube. So hello to all Facebook and YouTube viewers. Thank you all for your great support and feedback. My name is Suala Muhammad, Program Associate of SEAMEO SEN, and I will be your MC for today. And with the amazing team consists of the Head of Training and Consultation Division, Wan Monisha Matsha, Madam Mastura, Madam Harisha, Mr. Ikram, as well as from the Strategic Communication Unit, Mr. Rusnedi, Mr. Shabil, and Mr. Ashraf. We would like to say that we are absolutely delighted to have all of you with us. Welcome again, and we hope you will have a great learning experience with SEAMEO SEN for the whole 3 days and with Associate Professor Dr. Sharifah Mariam Al-Juni. Ladies and gentlemen, these training sessions would not have been materialized if it had not been for the great support and ideas from our very own Director of SEAMEO SEN, Dr. Haja Hanani Harun Rasid. Dr. Hanani is extensively passionate about special education, and this topic today, psychoeducational approaches for supporting students with learning disabilities, is definitely close to her heart. And with that, I'm extremely honored to welcome Dr. Haja Hanani Harun Rasid to deliver her opening remarks. Dr. Hanani, the floor is yours.
Assalamualaikum and a very good morning. Dr. Azlisani Mak Jalil, Deputy Director of SEAMEO SEN, SEAMEO SEN Customized Course Organizing Committee, Associate Professor Dr. Sharifah Mariam Hussein Al-Junid, Psychologist, National University of Singapore, and to all participants from SEAMEO member countries. It is an honor for me to be here today and welcome all of you to the customized course, Psychoeducational Approaches for Supporting Students with Learning Disabilities. I would like to take this opportunity to express my deepest gratitude to all participants who live stream via Zoom, SEAMEO SEN Facebook and YouTube. I appreciate your commitment to participate in this 3 days course starting today until Thursday. I am certain all of you here are dedicated educators, parents, caretakers, and school administrators that share the same goal, which is to uplift the quality of education for learners with disabilities. As the regional center for special educational needs, SEAMEO SEN is dedicated to its role in promoting teachers' capacity building, increasing awareness, and fostering collaborative efforts among countries, institutions, and non-profit organizations for the benefit of the special education community in SEAMEO member countries and beyond. Ladies and gentlemen, it is vital for teachers to be equipped with psychoeducational knowledge in order to prepare themselves in handling unprecedented situations in class, which will help in lowering their stress level. As a teacher of students with learning disabilities, the need to offer relevant support for students with disabilities is highly needed. Psychoeducational approaches are indeed beneficial for teachers to improve classroom environment, students' learning and behavior. These approaches will ease teachers to deliver the required educational service and at the same time will help to increase students' psychological well-being. They also enable teachers to motivate and guide the students to maximize their potential based on their abilities. Moreover, it is found that these approaches will also benefit parents and caretakers in reducing parental stress in dealing with children's behavior on a daily basis. Since parents or caretakers are the best individuals to facilitate their children, it is important for them to know how to tackle and cope with their children's needs. Parental involvement is crucial as it plays as a motivating factor not only for psychological development of students with learning disabilities, but also for their learning achievement. This customized course will be discussing psychoeducational approaches for supporting learners with learning disabilities. It is expected that this course will enlighten educators on psychological approaches to support students with learning disabilities in accelerating their potential and achieve independent lives. Furthermore, it will educate teachers to consider all learners' physical, psychological, social needs when implementing these approaches. It is hoped that all of you can actively participate in the discussion session to share any ideas and suggestions on teaching and learning approaches from the perspectives of Southeast Asian countries. As we live in a multicultural and diverse region, I believe we have the advantage of exploring different approaches within our region. Hence, I hope the knowledge shared can be adapted to your local education setting and beneficial for special education students in your country. On another note, I would like to express my highest gratitude to Associate Professor Dr. Sharifah Mariam Hussein Al-Junid for her diligent commitment for sharing her vast knowledge and experience with all of us. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I wish you an enjoyable and productive training course ahead. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi Dr. Hanani. Thank you so much for your inspiring remarks. Yes, I am definitely certain that our teachers for today will engage and actively participate. Ladies and gentlemen, on 26 August 2021, the Southeast Asian Ministers of Education Organization, SEAMEO Secretariat, in close collaboration with UNESCO Bangkok, launched the online course for teachers entitled Responding to Educational Needs of Learners with Disabilities in Emergencies. And with 4 modules and 26 videos, Disability Inclusive Teaching in Emergencies, or DTIM, is a free online self-paced course designed to assist teachers of learners with disabilities in ensuring inclusive instructions and support during an emergency. The online course content experts are from SEAMEO SEN, namely Dr. Hajah Hanani Harul Rasid, the Director of SEAMEO SEN. Our speaker for today, Associate Professor Dr. Sharifah Mariam Al-Junid. We have Madam Salma binti Jopri, Director of Special Educational Minister of Education Malaysia, Dr. Sri Renani Panjastuti from Indonesia, and we have Ms. Tan Lee Wayne from Jenis Kunia, Malaysia for the DT module. Now, let us watch the video on DT module.
Asia-Pacific region is prone to natural disasters and conflicts. In emergency situations, children are especially affected and face particular risk to their access to education system. School closures have devastating consequences for all learners, and learners with disabilities are among those most at risk of falling behind. In response to these educational needs of learners with disabilities, UNESCO and SEAMEO, with financial support from GPE, worked hand-in-hand with other supporting partners to create a platform called Disability Inclusive Teaching in Emergencies, or in short, DTEM. It is an asynchronous and self-directed online teacher training course designed for the Asia and Pacific region. The first pilot has taken place from September to October 2021 within 4 countries: Bhutan, Cambodia, Laos PDR, and Timor-Leste. DTEM contains 4 modules in the following areas: stress management and psychosocial support, utilizing different assistive technologies, developing an emergency response plan, and continuity of learning. They are available in 6 languages: Bahasa Indonesia, Dzongkha, English, Khmer, Laotian, and Tetun. To serve as home for the modules, a learning management system was developed in web and mobile versions. Both have user-friendly features such as applying self-paced learning model, using linear learning path, providing iconic learning activities, and allowing self-generated certificate. More than 1,200 educators took part in the pilot test, exceeding the initial target of 500. Participants from Bhutan, Cambodia, and Laos PDR completed the course entirely online, while Timor-Leste employed a blended mode. The online course also tracked using Google Analytics that include features in identifying trends and patterns on how learners engage with the learning management system. Data gathering, analysis, monitoring, visualization, reporting, and integration with other applications are all enabled by features.
Recently, I got an opportunity to attend and complete an online course on responding to educational needs of learners with disabilities and emergencies. The course enriched me with ideas, information, plans, and strategies that I can specifically implement with learners with disabilities during emergencies. I have become more familiar with utilization of various assistive devices. The online course will not only guide me, but also the students and school as a whole, should there be any unprecedented event such as the COVID-19 pandemic, and I'm grateful and thankful for this opportunity. Thank you.
សូមជម្រាបសួរនាងខ្ញុំឈ្មោះឆេនរនីជាគ្រូបង្រៀននៅវិទ្យាល័យវិទ្យាសាស្ត្រសម្រងខេត្តឧត្តរមានជ័យនៅថ្ងៃនេះនាងខ្ញុំសូមសម្ដែងនៅចំណាប់អារម្មណ៍បន្ទាប់ពីបានសិក្សាពីចម្ងាយដែលរៀបចំឡើងដោយ GDP SEAMEO និង UNESCO ចំណុចដែលនាងខ្ញុំចាប់អារម្មណ៍ជាងគេគឺទៅលើចំណុចនៃការគ្រប់គ្រងភាពតានតឹងនិងការជួយសិស្សមានពិការភាពក្នុងការសិក្សារៀនសូត្រនាងខ្ញុំគិតថាវគ្គសិក្សានេះពិតជាមានសារៈសំខាន់ខ្លាំងណាស់សម្រាប់ជួយដល់លោកគ្រូនិងសិស្សសម្រាប់យកទៅអនុវត្តក្នុងថ្នាក់រៀននិងដើម្បីជួយដល់សិស្សមានពិការភាពកាត់បន្ថយភាពតានតឹងនិងជួយដល់សិស្សមាននៅពេលដែលមានគ្រោះអាសន្នហើយឡើងសូមអរគុណ
First of all, I would like to thank to the organization and its people who offer us these good opportunities and who prepare us this course. The contents of this course is very useful for us as a teachers who teach students with disabilities in a diverse classroom. I have learned so many aspects about helping students with disabilities, for instance, how to use the technology, how to prepare the course, how to prepare to help students with disabilities in emergencies. I will apply all what I have learned in my teaching careers, and I hope it's very beneficial for us. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Building on the success of the pilot, there are plans to expand the project by making the materials available in more languages with additional modules and open it as an open and free online course to a wider public in Southeast Asia and beyond. For more information, please visit www.onlinecourse.seameo.org and sign up for the course to enhance your capacity to support learners with disabilities.
Thank you. That video surely motivates us all the educators here to enroll and sign up as the learner for the BT module. All the best to those who have signed up and to those who will sign up. As for today, let's hope everyone here is ready for the 3-day training sessions with our distinguished speaker. But before that, let us capture this wonderful moment together with everyone from Training and Consultation Division as well as from the Strategic Communication Unit of SEAMEO SEN. Let us all turn on our camera, all the educators here. Okay, I'm going to do a countdown. Let us all turn on our camera and smile. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay, second shot. 1, 2, 3. And last one, freestyle everybody. 1, 2, 3. All right, thank you. In the meantime, please do follow us on our social media on our Instagram, Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can also watch more videos of our previous training programs, webinars, and for our future upcoming programs. Now I shall move on to the training briefing. As this briefing is highly significant for all participants, we hope you pay close attention. Firstly, there will be no attendance form. Therefore, participants are highly required to change their usernames on screen with their full names as registered in MOE email so that our officers are able to take your attendance. Secondly, you are highly encouraged to engage or ask questions to the speakers in the chat box, but please be reminded to not use simplified words in your notes so that the committee can understand you better. As for certificate of attendance, it will only be sent to participants who are in full attendance and have completed the participant form and evaluation questions. The evaluation link will be shared with you on the third day, and the e-certificate will be sent to participants through email that has been registered within 14 working days. Another important reminder, Certificate of Excellence will only be sent to participants who submit the action plan report with activities photos related to the course within 2 months after the course ends, and it is subject to review and approval from Head Training and Consultation Division of SEAMEO SEN as well as SEAMEO SEN Director. You may carry out your activities either in small or large group, and the sample of action plan and report on execution will be shared through your registered email along with the evaluation link at the end of the training session. As for notes, we will email you the notes at the end of the training sessions, again after the third day. However, only participants with full attendance will receive the materials mentioned. And as for our viewers on Facebook and YouTube, there will be no certificates given to you from SEAMEO SEN. Thank you all for your kind attention. Now, moving on, we are delighted and extremely honored to have our distinguished speaker for today, Associate Professor Dr. Sharifah Mariam Al-Junaid. Associate Professor Dr. Sharifah Mariam Al-Junaid is a chartered psychologist who has been working with children with disabilities and special needs for more than 25 years. She is an adjunct professor in 2 leading universities in Singapore, the National University of Singapore Psychology Department, as well as the Office of Education Research in the National Institute of Education Nanyang Technological University. Dr. Sharifah is well known internationally for her research work on children with autism and other learning disabilities. She is currently a research associate in the Department of Psychology and Language of Science, University College London in UK. Regionally in Southeast Asia, Dr. Sharifah has conducted many training courses and workshops for teachers and educators on the subject of special needs and disabilities. We know her very well in SEAMEO SEN. Dr. Sharifah has been a governing board member for SEAMEO SEN since SEAMEO SEN was first set up more than 6 years. In fact, she is the longest serving governing board member for SEAMEO SEN. Welcome, Dr. Sharifah. How are you? Hi, Dr. Sharifah. Assalamualaikum. I think your mic is still muted.
Hello, Assalamualaikum all of
Hi,
you. Yeah,
Doctor.
thank you, Suhaila. Good to be here.
Thank you, Doctor. Are you ready for today?
I'm ready as all the participants are here today.
Okay, Doctor. The floor is yours.
Right.
All
Thank
the
you.
best.
Okay, so maybe as a start, I would like to actually give our traditional greeting to our host from SEAMEO SEN as well as our many participants from Malaysia. Selamat pagi and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I also see that there are many participants from Thailand and Philippines. So Sawadi Don Chao and Magandang Umaga. And not forgetting for the many of you in the rest of Southeast Asia, a very good morning. And it is my extreme pleasure to be with all of you for today and indeed for the next 3 days. Sincere gratitude to the team at SEAMEO SEN, in particular, Director for SEAMEO SEN, Dr. Haja Hanani, and the wonderful team at SEAMEO SEN, led amply by Madam Suhaila, for actually working very closely with me and supporting me in setting up this course for 3 days. I'm really looking forward to not just learning with you, but also learning from you, because I do hope that we can actually exchange experiences. Many of you have been teachers for perhaps as long as I have, or even longer. So all that rich learning is such an important pool of knowledge that we should share with each other. Yeah. So without further ado, I would like to actually start by sharing my slide. Okay, so this is a topic that we're going to talk about: psychoeducational approaches for students with learning disabilities. An overview of what we're going to cover for the next 3 days. So the first day, today, we're going to spend a bit of time understanding a little bit about what are learning disabilities. This term is often used by many people with different meaning. So you're going to establish a common understanding today. We're also going to understand a little bit about what goes on in terms of the minds and the learning facilities of children with learning disabilities, yeah, and what makes them tick inside their head. We also try and understand what can we do as teachers to help their learning a little bit easier wherever they may be. And today I will introduce to you a very useful framework that has helped me and many psychologists and educators to understand students with special needs as well as students with disabilities, and that is the Ecological Framework. This is also known as the biopsychosocial approach, and it is used by many international organizations, including the World Health Organization, as a very evidence-based approach towards understanding disabilities and functioning. Day 2, tomorrow, we're going to look in at one dimension of the needs of children with learning disabilities, and that's the social-emotional aspects, right? Because we know that academic concerns are just one concern. I'm sure like many of you, we believe, especially in Southeast Asia, we believe in the balanced approach, right? We believe in wanting to be holistic. So if you want to be balanced and holistic, it's not just the academic needs, but the social emotional needs also matter. And we're going to talk about the risks as well as the protective factors. And this again is very much in line with the our Asian values, right? We know that every condition, there's always a positive as well as a challenge, the negative, right? So we're going to talk about that tomorrow. And the last day, we're going to talk about the ecosystem. All of us believe, and I'm sure we all have heard the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. So if we want the ideal village to help children with learning disabilities, what does that village look like? What can we do, you and I, to create an ecosystem, a village that is helpful for students with disabilities, and more importantly, to help us educators of children, of learners with disabilities, to learn their best and thrive. Yeah, because at the end of the day, we want our students with disabilities not just to be good learners, not just to have good social emotional. At the end of the day, ultimately, our goal is for them to have a good quality of life. And we'll talk about that more on the third day. So let's dive into the first day session, which is understanding learning disabilities, or LD. Yeah. Okay. So let's get the terminologies sorted out. Like I said, there are many definitions. If you Google, oh no, you get millions of definitions. However, this is one definition that has been used in many places, and it came from the USA. It's also used in many countries. It is a disorder in one or more of the basic psychological processes that is involved in understanding, using spoken words or written language. And it can manifest itself. It shows itself in an imperfect ability to listen, to think, to pay attention, speak, write, or spell. Okay. And one of the things that I want to highlight about this definition is that it is an umbrella term. Okay, umbrella means it covers many specific diagnoses. So you may heard diagnoses like dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, attention deficit disorder, specific language impairment. All these specific disabilities come under the larger umbrella of learning disabilities. Okay, as teachers, my encouragement for you is don't get so worked up about all these funny definitions of the specific disabilities, right? But rather, we think as teachers, we think about them in terms of what do we need to understand about their learning, how do we know their needs, and what can we do as teachers to address their needs. I will come to that point a little while later. But one of the things that we need to remember about learning disabilities is that these are disabilities that do not come from things that are purely due to visual, to hearing, to motor disabilities, or even environmental or cultural or economic disadvantage. In other words, if the only disability that the child has is perhaps he is blind or deaf, or perhaps he has a physical impairment, if that is the only disability, then this is not considered a learning disability. Yeah. Similarly, we know that some children, they don't have any disability, but they come from very impoverished background. They come from perhaps trauma backgrounds, from war, right? From disasters. And of course, if you are traumatized, you're not going to learn very well. If you are really have been abused or really at living at poverty level, you're not going to learn very well. Those are not considered as learning disabilities. Okay. So I just want to make that clear so that we have the same understanding as we go through the course the next 3 days. Okay, that's what it is. However, because this term has been used and abused many times, there's lots of myths about what learning disabilities are. So I thought as a start today, I want to get some facts right, and distinguish between the facts and the fake news about learning disabilities. To do that, I will use something that's called Kahoot. Now, I know some of you have used Kahoot before. I know some teachers have been using Kahoot in many of the classes, but I know some of you may be not familiar with it. So for those of you who are familiar, you definitely will know what to do. Those of you who are perhaps less familiar, I will take it slowly, okay? In terms of knowing what we can do. Okay, so let's try. The first thing you need to do is to get into the mode. Give me a minute while I set it up. This is my way to be interactive, and we will be using Kahoot for several times in the next few days. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is I will put on the link the Kahoot pin that you're going to use right now for this particular activity. Please click on it and launch it. You can use your handphone or even use in the another web page, right? But you need to have another device or another link to open it up. Wonderful. We have many people already coming in. As you come in, for those who are not familiar, you have to put your nickname or real name, up to you, right? This is your chance to live up your dream. Okay? If you think you're Wonder Woman, put the name Wonder Woman, as long as you know who you are. Okay. Oh, very good. Okay. And for those of you who are in the Facebook, don't worry. You can still participate even if you, are not putting in your response in the Kahoot. Okay. We'll give some time before everybody logs on. Okay. You're going to start now. So the first statement is this: learning disabilities are more common among people with low intelligence. Look at your Kahoots. If you think the answer is true, you click true. If you think the answer is false, you click false. Okay, Can all of you show that? Okay. All right. So the answer for this is false. Okay. This is just a trial. Okay. So that you all get the hang of how we do this. Okay. So this statement is false because people with learning disabilities are not generally having low intelligence. In fact, for some conditions like dyslexia, for a clinician to diagnose, you must first rule out that the child has low IQ. Okay, so many students with learning disabilities can have good IQ or even above average IQ. So not all people with learning disabilities have low intelligence. All right, okay, let's see. Right, we can see that the one who answered the fastest is Christina Anthony. So Christina Anthony, you have point of 828. That means you're the fastest. Okay, I know this is just a trial. It's okay. So as we do, perhaps more of you can join in, and then we can see who's the winner. Okay, I don't know whether Madam Suhaila is going to give a special present to those who are going to be a winner for this Kahoots. Okay, right. Shall we go on to the next myth or fact? Okay. Learning disabilities are only a problem in schools. Okay, give your answer in the Kahoot either on your handphone or in the other web link that you have launched for this game. Okay, now you see I gave a time, there's a time limit, yeah, so you cannot take forever, you cannot be Googling the answer, okay, so this one is fast, fingers first, right? Right, so yes, many of you have got it right. Learning disabilities are not just a problem in school settings. Now, why is this an important myth to have? Because many people think, okay, your learning disabilities, well, maybe you only have a problem with academic. Oh, never mind lah. You know, it's only a problem in school. You know, you can still have you be successful in other things at home, doing things is fine. Well, actually, the fact is that if you have a learning disability, it is not just academic work. Actually, and we will learn this later. The basis of learning disability is that it affects a person's ability to process information. Yeah, and because it affects the ability to process information in here, what happens is all information, whether it's academic information, whether you are outside, whether you are driving, whether you're walking, whether you are in the kitchen, it is a disability that affects many areas of functioning beyond the school setting. So this is another myth that we need to correct, right? Because again, what it means is that if we as teachers can identify and help children with learning disabilities in school, you're not only helping the child in school, you're helping the child for life, because it will help him or her to be a better functioning person in areas outside school. Okay. Right, okay. Do we have the same person? Yes, Christina Anthony again, very fast. Still at the top scoreboard. Okay, well done, Christina. Right. Ready for the next one? True or false? Children with LDs are lazy and unmotivated. Unfortunately, very often you see teachers who are perhaps not informed, not aware, and perhaps not sensitive, use such words. So, you know, so-and-so, actually he can study, but he's just lazy. Oh, he doesn't have a good motivation, right? So these are again common myths. The reality is that many children with LD want to learn. They want to be successful, and they work hard. They try their very best to be good learners. However, they keep facing barriers and challenges and difficulties, and they don't get the support that they need. And can you imagine if you're trying your best again and again to do something, and then as you go from one year to another, what you get are unsuccess, no support, and people calling you names and accusing you of being stupid, lazy, and unmotivated. Over time, your own motivation and self-esteem will go down. So over time, they may lose motivation, not because they don't have it, but because it has been chipped away by how the people around them react to them. Yeah. So this is a myth that again we must correct so that we can help them. Right. Christina again. Well done. Okay. She has a streak of 3 correct answers in a row. Fantastic. Okay, let's move on. The next one. Dyslexic children read backwards. True or false? You have to be very fast now. There's a time limit, remember? Oh, very good. Many of you have got it correct. Okay, this myth or this fake news possibly comes from a lot of misunderstanding. You hear that one of the characteristics of dyslexia is that they read B as D. We must remember that dyslexic is not a vision difficulty. There's nothing wrong with your eyes, right? So if people are telling you, no, I have a special glass that can help children with dyslexia, that is not true, right? That's not fact. That's not evidence-based. The problem with dyslexia stems from here. It's a neurobiological problem, and we will discuss that later. But it's not just reading backwards. Children with dyslexia have problem processing language and language sounds. Okay, and because of that, they sometimes get confused. They sometimes get confused between the letter and the sound. So it's not a vision problem, it is a processing problem. Okay. Okay. Sahir is climbing up. Well done, Sahir. Next one. Lack of parental involvement is the main cause of learning disability. True or false? Again, another myth. Yeah, but how many times whereby, you see a child struggling in school, not handing up homework, not attending in class. Very often you see people blaming parents. Oh, what is the mother doing? How come the father doesn't pay attention? Oh, I've called up the father and mother many times, but they don't want to come. He comes from a poor home background. He comes from a broken home. They blame the home background as the cause of LD. This is not true. This is a myth, right? However, I have to say that sometimes learning disabilities can occur for any child, regardless of background. Learning disabilities can happen in a child from an advantaged background or disadvantaged background. Okay, learning disabilities can occur in a family where it is a stable family with good parents, or an unstable family where the parents have difficulties. So sometimes you get children with genuine learning disabilities that comes from home that are difficult or broken homes, but that doesn't mean that the lack of parental involvement or the disadvantaged background is the cause. It is not the cause of the LD. It's other thing that is the cause. However, when a child with learning disability grows up in an environment, in a home environment, in a family environment that has additional challenge, we know that he has double jeopardy. In other words, he has multiple barriers to overcome, not just the learning disabilities, but also the environmental challenges and the situational factors that makes it much more difficult for him to overcome his difficulties. Okay. Yes, well, Christina Anthony, you're still at the top. But other people are slowly climbing up. Well done. Okay, next one. Learning disabilities affect more boys than girls. True or false? Okay, this one is a little bit tricky. If you read many reports from many countries, they will tell you that when they look at the number of children that actually get diagnosed, in other words, where they are referred to a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a specialist for assessment, there are more boys who are referred and therefore more boys who are diagnosed, right? However, in some studies that basically look at a whole school or a whole country and then do a screening. In other words, they don't wait for people to refer and do a systematic screening of all children, boys and girls, for learning disabilities. What they found was that an almost equal number of boys and girls really have learning disabilities. Okay, so this is a little tricky because it tells us one thing. It tells us two things. One is that if you just look at the gender risk, the difference between boys and girls is not that much. However, boys are more likely to be referred for assessment. Boys are more likely to be identified to have learning disabilities. Girls, on the other hand, are at risk of being under-identified and underdiagnosed, right? So I think this tells us that girls are at a slight disadvantage, because what happens when you are not identified, you're not recognized to have a learning disabilities, and therefore you're not referred for assessment. Chances are your needs are not addressed, and therefore you will run the risk of actually educational underachievement. So this is something that we have to bear in mind. Just because it's a girl, we mustn't ignore when a girl is struggling in learning, because we have this idea, this notion that, oh, you know, learning disabilities is more of a boys thing and not a girls thing, right? Okay, still have the, oh, look here, somebody else. Miss Lely, okay, it's now the top scorer. Next one. Okay. Special glasses can help children with LD, especially dyslexia. Okay, this is an easy one because I gave you a clue. If you've been paying attention since the beginning, you'll get this answer correct very quickly. Let's see who gives the answer the fastest this time. All right. Yeah, so the answer is no, because as I said earlier, dyslexia is not a vision problem, it's a processing problem. But I know in many countries in Southeast Asia, you have people that sell this. You have people that market this. You have people that say, no, this is special glasses. You wear this, your dyslexia will be cured. Please, please do not get sucked in or buy into this false claim. And please, if you know of parents who are attempted to do so, please advise them that not to do so, because it's not the best way. There are good ways, good evidence-based strategies for addressing dyslexia. Wearing special glasses will not be helpful. Okay, all right. So again, we see, right, the next one. Medications can be used to cure learning disabilities. True or false? Okay, this is also quite a tricky one. The answer is false. Medications cannot cure learning disabilities. However, you will find that sometimes, in some cases, the psychiatrist, the clinician, may actually recommend medication to help the child address the symptoms of learning disabilities, which can then make the child more respond better to interventions. Okay, I will talk specifically about medication, why it works for some condition and why it doesn't work, so that at least we have a better understanding about medications. Okay, this is a tricky one because usually people have very strong views about medication, right? You say, no, don't want medication, right? They were anti-medication. Now, I think as educators, it's very important that we must make sure that whatever advice we give parents is based on facts, based on evidence, right? And not what we think or our personal judgment. Okay, there are good evidence to show that medications is useful to help manage the symptoms of some types of learning disabilities. I will explain later what they are, why it is so for some disabilities. Okay, but for now, let's go on. Okay, we finished. Let's see who's the winner. So number 3 is Rose. Well done, Rose. Second place, Fahmi. Well done. And the winner Muhammad Shahir, wow, with 6,290 points. Okay. And they are also runners-up. Okay, well done, everyone. Okay. Right. So I hope that gives an overview of the myths and facts that about learning disabilities. I'm not going to go a bit deeper to help us understand about this condition called learning disabilities. Madam Suhaila, I don't know whether you're going to give the presents to the people who. Okay.
We have a sort of like a statement in the chat box. If you want me to read it now,
Yes,
to you,
please.
or?
Yes, please. Yeah, you can.
Okay, it says here that from Miss Christina Anthony, is it because girls often have masking, therefore they are underdiagnosed?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Christina. Christina, as you can see, she was one of the fastest fingers in the first 5 questions. Excellent question, Christina. And you are right in the sense that in some cases, some girls are good at masking. What does mask mean? Mask mean, well, in COVID time, right? Everybody wears a mask, right? It means cover up, right? How do you cover up? Well, you know, girls, they're very social. Some girls are very good, like in a class, even though they don't understand what goes on, they look around them, they look at their friends, and they copy what their friends do. So when the teacher is talking, they may not understand, but they go, yeah, right? And then when the teacher is giving work, they're very good, they're very social, they'll be very nice to their friends, and then they try and imitate or copy what they do, right? But if the teacher is attentive and really watch her actually doing her work, the teacher will be able to see that actually she's imitating rather than understanding. So that's an example of a child who's masking. So for such children, in the day-to-day lessons, the teacher may not be able to see. When does the symptom occur? Maybe at the end of the year when the teacher gives an exam or a test. How come this child, she's so good in class, she's very compliant, she's a good, quiet child and very well behaved. Oh dear, how come she failed so badly, right? So, it must be that she didn't study, whatever, you know. So all this kind of ideas comes up. So that's one reason. Another reason is that sometimes the boys, if they're sitting in class and they don't understand, many of them, this is some of the boys, not all, they tend to act out, right? They talk to their friend, walk around, right? And if the teacher say, okay, so and so, since you are, talking around, you go and read. Sometimes I see boys when they are caught like that and they have a learning disabilities, what do? They clown around. They be the clown. Ha ha ha. They make jokes, right? Because in their mind, I'd rather be known as naughty and a clown rather than being known as stupid, right? It's more dignity in his mind. So this is how boys mask their disability by clowning around, by drawing attention to other things. They act tough. So because of this kind of gender differences and cultural differences, that's why more boys get picked up rather than the girls. So the boys mask too, but their masking is a little bit different. The way they mask actually draws attention to them. So the teacher will go to the principal and say, oh, this boy, I cannot stand him. Are you sure he doesn't have a condition? Please send him to the principal. So they get attention for a different reason. Yeah. So thank you, Christina. You've asked a good question that helps me to elaborate on that. So please write your question in the chat. Your question actually allow me to perhaps go deeper into certain areas that I might not cover. And please, 3 days is not enough to do cover LD, okay? I teach in university and sometimes we take a whole semester to cover this topic. So this is just an overview. When you ask a question, it tells me that you're particularly interested in something and I will go deeper on that. Okay, so LD or learning disabilities is the umbrella term. I want to highlight 2 of the most common specific LDs. One is dyslexia, okay? So what is it? There's a definition to it. Dyslexia is when a child shows that he struggles to acquire accurate and fluent reading, okay? When accurate and fluent word reading or spelling develops very incompletely or with very great difficulty. The child struggles even to learn basic reading. That's the definition of dyslexia. Okay, so that is the technical definition. But what do you as teachers would see it in the classroom? right? Because we don't know what goes on in the child's mind. We don't know whether he's struggling or not. But what we see is that when we give something to read, especially new words, the child reads inaccurately, right? Mat becomes mace, or mother becomes matter, right? The child often guess at the word by looking at the picture or the context rather than reading accurately. So you will know that sometimes when you give picture books, some dyslexic children are very clever, right? They guess the meaning of the word from the picture or the context. But when you give them in a flashcard, the word by itself, there's no contextual information. That's where you can really see the extent to which the reading is very inaccurate. Another sign that you see is reading fluency is affected. So it might be that if the words are simple, the child can read it one by one, but when it is put in a sentence or in a paragraph, he reads slowly and laboriously. Like, for example, the word clarity, clarity, that's struggling, right? And sometimes inaccurate. As the child sometimes gets older and he picks up word, and usually they don't decode the word, they don't break down each word, but they try to memorize the whole word, right? What you will find is that when they read something, the whole energy and focus is focused on trying to read accurately at the expense of comprehension. So they're so struggling with sounding out the word that they have no more attention, no more energy to think of the meaning. So as a result, they can read, but they don't understand it. They need to read many, many times. Oh, then they get it. Okay. On the flip side, writing is also affected, right? Writing accuracy, and they write very slowly, lots of self-correction, lots of mistake. And because they're so focused, so much energy into the technical aspects of writing, that they may not have the time and mental space to think about the flair of writing, the expression, using beautiful words. So even though sometimes the child is creative, when asked to write a composition, he writes the most simple and boring comprehension. It's not that the child is not creative, it's because the child writes only what he can spell. And if your spelling is no good, you have a very limited vocabulary to write. And that's why, in terms of writing expression, they are very much limited. Okay. So I've described in many ways children with dyslexia, but I thought let's hear it from the voice of a child with dyslexia, just to give you an impression. Because I think for those of you who may be new to this, you may be imagining a child that is really very limited. So I thought I'll show a little video just to give a sense of the experience of a person with dyslexia. Okay, give me a minute as I set up the video. This is dyslexia from a student's perspective.
Dyslexia, what it is to me is that I just have a hard time reading and writing and then trying to take notes and understand and process what my teachers say. Like sometimes I have a hard time saying it, so sometimes they think it's like made up or something. And so they think I just make an excuse for not being good at English or like writing, just my writing's really bad or my just reading and grammar and stuff. And they think I just make up an excuse, and it's not an excuse, and it's really something wrong with me. Sometimes when we're taking notes in class, it feels like we're like out catching butterflies, and it takes me forever just to catch one butterfly, and then the whole other class have caught like 3 butterflies, and I have to hurry up and catch up and take my time to catch 2 other butterflies, and it's just hard because it took me forever to get the first one. The best thing about dyslexia is that with like the 5 senses, when you're missing one, it heightens other ones. So since I'm missing kind of my English kind of section of my brain, it heightens other stuff like science and math. And I do excel in those classes, and I just love those classes. And I just love doing scientific things like inventing stuff, programming stuff. What I would tell someone else with dyslexia is that they're not stupid and they can do it. And you just gotta think of your own way to like take in information and stuff. And sometimes maybe my
Okay. I hope you caught a little bit about what was said by the youngster. What strikes me is that he is very aware of his struggles in learning, right? But at the same time, he is very aware of his strength. And I hope you caught the fact that he said, you know, he may be struggling, not just in reading, right? He said, even when trying to catch butterflies, he's not as good as other children. But at the same time, probably because of good support from teachers, from home, he has managed to overcome and recognize his disability. And because he knows that it is not that he is stupid, he has a disability that is preventing him. And that's why he confidently said that the most important thing that you have to know, you're not stupid, you can do it. And that's the kind of attitude and social emotional resilience that we want to give all children with learning disabilities. And that is why for tomorrow, we're going to focus on social emotional difficulties. Yeah. So let's carry on. As I said, dyslexia is one of the most common learning disabilities. Another condition that's also very common is ADHD, Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. This is a neurodevelopmental disorder described as persistent or ongoing patterns of inattention, hyperactivity, impulsivity. The child is moving around, focus, attention very poor all over the place, and very impulsive. Doesn't think before he says something, doesn't think before he acts, right? So that's at the brain level. What do you see as a teacher? You see in class, he doesn't listen. When you're telling something, his eyes are all over the place. He may be looking out the window, talking about his friends, doing other things. You give him a task, he doesn't stick to one task. His tables are all over the place, disorganized, his bags is terrible, always forget things, right? I'm sure you have encountered such children before. And even at the physical level, always moving around. We always say that sometimes children with ADHD, they're like having ants in their pants, right? Always fidgety, sometimes talks excessively, even out of topic, okay? Cannot wait. If you ask him to wait, teacher me, right? Always, so I'm sure you've seen this. So these are the characteristics that you will see in the classroom. I will also show a video for those of you who may not have worked with children with ADHD. Let's see a snippet of a child with this condition.
Julian was a very restless boy. He was so hyperactive, he couldn't even sit still for a meal. Always fidgeting, running around, touching this, tearing that. Don't even try to get him to sit still to do his homework. So how was he doing in school?
Why you should have said at me?
Needless to say, he wasn't coping well, and his parents were at a loss as to how to deal with Julian.
Can't you just sit still in class? Not only your form teacher complained, the other teachers are saying you're causing trouble in class. Julian, your mommy is going to be very upset with you.
I know we have never laid our hands on Julian before, but he may need a different approach. doesn't respond to our talking to him, no matter how firm we are with him. Julian! See, he's obviously not listening. He's not scared of us anymore. He has been losing his things. His work is very messy, and he doesn't seem to put in any effort. He is easily distracted, and the teachers say that he plays all the time. We have changed his school to give him new environment, but nothing seems to change. Nothing seems to work. You know, every teacher who has taught him is saying the same thing. That Julian is a difficult student and he is destructive in class. I dread being called up by the principal for another of those pep talk again.
But you know how I feel about Kaden, right?
Maybe this is what he needs now. He needs to know what is right and what is wrong.
Let's try to talk to him one more time. Julian! Do you know why I have to do this? Why are you so naughty?
Despite being punished, Julian got into trouble at school again. He simply couldn't control his behavior. The punishments became so regular that his parents were at a loss as to how to deal with Julian. They were desperate for a solution. A few months later, Julian's parents received a call from the school counselor. She suggested that Julian be assessed by REACH, a community-based mental health service that works closely with schools, community agencies and family doctors to help students with emotional, behavioral and developmental disorders. Julian was assessed as having attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, otherwise known as ADHD. He was referred to the Child Guidance Clinic for treatment and behavior management therapy. Today, Julian is adjusting well and is better settled in school. If you feel your child is hyperactive or too disruptive and is unable to pay attention, please speak to your school counselor, who may then consult with the REACH Community Mental Health Team.
A very excellent video, Doctor. Yeah.
I really hope that gives you a glimpse of the struggles of the child in with ADHD. And what I like about the video is also it shows what happened, how much struggles the parents are facing, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes we as teachers, we think, oh, you know, he's struggling in school. What is the parents doing? What is the mother doing, right? We assume that the parents are not doing anything. But remember, the child is only 5 hours with us. The rest, the 15 hours is at home with the parents, 7 days a week, no holidays. So as much as we are struggling with the child, the parents are struggling even more. And as you can see from the video, what is causing the mom to be exasperated and wanting firm actions? Because he said, I'm fed up. I go to school, I get blamed as if I am a bad parent, right? So I think this is where, as part of our role as educators, when we want to address students with learning disabilities, yes, there are things that we can do in school, but an equally important component is how do we work with parents? And we're going to address that specifically on the third day. Okay. All right. So moving on.
Doctor?
Yes, please.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Sure.
There are questions in the chat box, if I may read them to you.
Yes, please.
Okay, the first one that says ADHD versus ADD, as well as can dyslexia and ADHD co-occur?
Okay,
Yeah.
excellent questions. I address the second question first.
Okay.
In clinical terms, when a child has two different conditions in the same child, that's called comorbidity. Okay, comorbidity. Comorbidity can happen. You can have dyslexia plus ADHD. It's possible. It's not as common, but it's just possible. Sometimes you are not doubly blessed, you are triply blessed. I've worked with children that have hearing impairment with ADHD and a physical impairment, or a child with ADHD, dyslexia, and autism. Oh my goodness, triply blessed, right? So again, because this condition is organic, scientists don't actually know. So it can happen, like, sometimes trees grow in a way that we want. Sometimes they grow in ways that is, that's nature, isn't it? You take what you get, right? So, but I like that question. Sorry, the second question you asked is whether it's ADD and ADHD. These are just clinical terminology, okay? So sometimes child with ADHD, the H or the hyperactivity is not as high as the other components, the symptoms. Therefore, the doctor gives ADD. My recommendation to you is, as a teacher, we don't have to worry about this, right? Because sometimes the hyperactivity may not be overt, but then subtle signs, the child may be tapping the feet or maybe wiggling the toes, you don't see, right? So it is about the same condition. The only difference is ADD. The hyperactivity is not as obvious as ADHD. That's the only main difference.
Okay, thank you for the feedback, Doctor. Last question in the chat box. Okay, I'm going to take this last question. After that,
Sure.
we persuade Dr. Sharifah. Can normal kids with normal intelligence have ADHD?
Yes, absolutely. Remember one of the myths that we have from the Kahoots? One of the myths is that children with learning disability have low IQ. Absolutely not. Okay. Whether it's dyslexia or ADHD, it can occur along the full spectrum, the full range of IQ. Okay. I've worked with children who are exceptionally gifted. Their IQ is extremely high, yet they have dyslexia and some has ADHD. These children are sometimes known as twice exceptional children. Twice exceptional, right? So if you want to Google and look at the term twice exceptional, why are they twice exceptional? One exceptionality is the learning disability. They are also exceptional in the fact that their IQ is exceptionally high. Okay, that's one extreme. The other extreme are children with ADHD, but also at the same time they have intellectual disability. So it's a different kind of LD, right? So these comorbidities, co-occurrence do occur. And of course, in between the full range, average, above average, right? So IQ is independent of learning disabilities. Yeah, I hope that. But of course, the important thing is that if a child with, say, ADHD have a high IQ, maybe the symptoms are different and the way we address the needs to be adjusted. If a child with ADHD with very low IQ, with intellectual disability, we may have to make some adjustments in terms of how we address it. So I hope that addressed your question. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Sharifah. So we have 15 more minutes before we go to our break.
Right. So, I will finish the next section and then we go for a break. Yeah, I may need a bit of time a little bit.
Sure.
So we'll go very fast. Thank you for reminding me of the time. So,
thank you.
Okay, I want to talk about this, right? Because I keep saying that it is a neurological problem. So the question is, if it's neurological, doesn't it mean that it is brain damage? This is relating to the question. How come you say it's neurological, but you can say they can have high IQ? Okay. Now, in order to really explain this, let me use this example. Okay. This is the picture of two brains of two person A and person B. One has ADHD, one doesn't have ADHD. Okay. Now, I want to ask you, and you put in the chat, which one, and this is a CAT scan, it's a brain scan. What goes on in the brain scan of two individuals? One has ADHD and one doesn't have ADHD. Okay. Just for those who are not familiar, in a brain scan where you see the red markers, this is mean it is lighted up, right? I mean it's active. There's a lot of activation. There's a lot of activity in the brain. That's why the color is red. The less red color means the less active it is. So think about the behavior of ADHD. And I want to know which one is the image of a brain of a child with ADHD. Person A or person B? Can you put your answers in the chat? Okay. Many people say A, but some persons say B. Interesting. Interesting. Right? So again, we are divided. We are divided. Okay. So The answer is B. Some of you got it correct. Now, those of you who put A, you say, hang on a minute. The child is moving around, hyperactive. Isn't it A? Because you see the brain are over energy, overactivated. Why is it here when there's less activation? This is ADHD. Okay, this is a very important difference, and I want you to think about it because this will tell you what is the core problem in children with ADHD. The core problem is that the part of the brain that controls emotion, that regulates attention, that controls activity, that part of the brain is not working hard enough. Okay, I repeat, there's a part of our brain, something called executive function, that help us to regulate our impulses, our attention, our thoughts, and our thinking processes. If that part is not working enough and therefore less activation, what happens? If your control mechanism is not working hard, you become out of control, right? And that is why this brain, the B, that's ADHD, because the parts of the brain that is responsible for the control mechanism, for executive function, is not activated, not working enough. Okay, so I hope that's clear. And that is why medication is used to treat the symptom, because the medication that is often used to treat ADHD is a stimulant. So you ask yourself, how come the child is hyperactive and you give stimulant? Doesn't it make it worse? Well, actually, no, because the medication stimulates the part of the brain that is supposed to be more active in terms of controlling impulses, controlling attention. You want the brain to function like that, whereby the executive function is more activated, more in control, more the energy is given towards controlling the impulses. Yeah. So I hope this addresses a little bit about that. But I keep mentioning about so what is this part of this brain that is not activated enough in ADHD and is responsible for many of the behaviors, because this part of the brain is not functioning. Okay. So this is so similarly for dyslexic, this is again dyslexic learners and typical readers, right? You see that the dyslexic learners, they only use a small part of the brain to actually to do reading. Whereas in a typical reader, we utilize many parts of the brain for reading. And that's why this child here becomes very effortful. You're not using enough horsepower for the activity called reading. And that's why it's right, like a car with low horsepower, you chuck and chuck and chuck, you struggle. That's what happens when you have dyslexia. So for ADHD, the impulse control and attention is the basic, and then for the part of the brain that's responsible for impulse control and attention is affected. For dyslexia, the part of the brain that is responsible for language and literacy processing is affected. Okay. Like I said, I mentioned about executive function. Okay, and I want to spend some time to actually go through this before we go for the break. Okay, because we know that, again, I keep saying many children with LD, they have good cognitive abilities, right? The IQ is okay, but it is the specific difficulty in executive function that is causing many of the problems that we see. So what is executive function? Like I mentioned, okay, this is the part of the brain, yeah, that we talk about. And executive function is mainly here in the prefrontal cortex. But of course, the brain is a connected whole. So of course, there's many connections as well. But in a nutshell, the executive function, if you can think, imagine it like an executive, like a coach. You know, the brain does many processes, right? It brings in input from the environment, it processes information, visual information, verbal information, it organizes things in the brain, and then it also needs to give the output. Whatever it hears or sees, it processes, and then it gives an output, either reading, writing, or even doing things, right? Executive function is the part of the brain that manages or regulates all that. Okay, so it's a very important function, because if the regulator or the coach is not doing well, what happens? Everything gets disorganized. Everything the person sees gets jumbled up in the head, and then the child has so many options to do that he doesn't know which action to take, which to take first and which to take second. Okay. So what happens when the executive function is impaired? Well, the analogy I like to give is this. They have good capacity, high IQ, but what happens? They are like a Ferrari stuck in a traffic jam, full of power, and yet you can't see it, right? Because they're stuck. Just like the child with ADHD or learning disability or dyslexia, he may be bright, creative, and intelligent, but in class, because of the barriers in executive function, you don't see that. They're not able to show you what they can do. So executive function is not a single ability. It is an umbrella term that involves planning, decision-making, problem solving, control of attention, inhibit or regulate emotion, keep things in your mind as you're doing things. So it's a whole range of processes that is come under executive function. Incidentally, there's a picture of me. That's not the car that I bring to school to work. That's a picture of me at the F1 before COVID. Yeah, hopefully the next F1 will also happen again in Singapore now that we are slowly opening up. So fingers crossed. Okay. So maybe we'll have a break now, because after the break, I'm going to give you a couple of tasks, hands-on activity that perhaps will help you understand a little bit better, make it more concrete for you. What is this thing called executive function, right? Because and I do want to spend time on that, because I think if you and I can really put ourselves in the shoes, in the mind of children with learning disabilities, I think we can truly empathize, and you will know how hard it is that they struggle. And then you as teachers, then you can also understand why the strategies work. I sometimes conduct training and I get the teachers tell me, we don't want to hear your theory, you know, it's boring. Can you just tell me what to do? Tell me the steps. I want the strategies, right? And my response to that, yes, the strategies are important. Of course, we will get there. But if you don't understand why the strategies work or why you need those strategies, there's a highly likelihood that you will try without understanding and you may apply it wrongly, right? Or sometimes you try, it doesn't work, you say, see, your strategy doesn't work, right? So I think it's important to really understand the inner workings before then we can understand why the strategy work, not just know what the strategies do, okay? So with that, I hand you over to Madam Suhaila for us to have a break.
Thank you, Dr. Sharifah. Thank you for the first session. It's already a lot to digest, and we have learned on we have received the course overview of what expected more for the more sessions later on. Okay, so I would like to hand over, to have these break sessions, and we'll come back about 15 minutes from now, the doctor. Okay, at 10:45. There are still questions in the chat box. Do you want me to read it to you now, or perhaps we come back later? Oh, Prof, you're still muted? Oh. You can't unmute. Okay, one moment, please.
Okay, now I can. Okay, so maybe may I suggest, I seek your indulgence, can we come back maybe 10:30, just 10 minutes? Then we can have more time to address some of the questions you have before we start the next section. Shall we do that? Yeah.
We'll come back 10:30.
Okay. Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. See you. Okay, like a Ferrari stuck in a traffic jam. Wow. What is executive function? Okay, I'm sure all the participants are eager to learn more from you, Dr. Sharifah. So I shall hand over the session back to you, Doctor.
Right, thank you, Madam Suhaila. Okay, now let's try and do this in a more hands-on way. Okay, I'm going to give you some tasks that basically will tap your executive function. Now, these tasks are the kind of some of the examples, not the real one, but some of the examples of the kind of tasks that I will use when I'm working in a clinical setting with a child. And I want to have a sensing of the child's, how impaired is the child's executive function. So for this task, I need all of you, wherever you are, to take out a pen and a small piece of, it doesn't matter, just a piece of paper. Okay, please do that now. And then in that piece of paper, draw for me this box, square box, and then a circle here, small circle. The size doesn't matter, you know. So Haila, are you in the game? Okay. Are you ready? If you're ready, then I can begin the task.
Let's go.
Shall I do? Okay. I hope everybody gets their paper with these two diagrams. Okay, then the next task is that you must listen very carefully to what I'm going to say. I'm going to give you specific instructions. Listen carefully, then you will need to follow the instructions by doing the activity in this paper. Ready? Okay.
Ready.
All right. Imagine this square here is a field. Imagine this square here is a field. Somewhere in this field, you have lost your keys. Your keys. You've lost it somewhere in the field. You don't know where exactly in the field you have lost it, but you know it's somewhere in this field. Now, by using your pencil and beginning here, I want you to draw a line to show me how you're going to search your lost keys in this field. So use your pen or pencil, starting here. Show me how you're going to walk from this circle here into the field and how you'll be walking in the field to search for your keys until you find them. Begin now. So remember, if you're walking, your line must be straight. Now you cannot suddenly jump from one to the other. You cannot fly. You must be walking throughout, right? I'll give you a minute and then we can talk about it. So Haila, you're looking very serious.
I need those keys. I need those keys for my Ferrari. This is hard, actually.
Yeah. It shouldn't be so hard, just intuitively, right? What would you do? By the way, when I do give this kind of task to children that I'm working with, I don't give them time limit. Now they can take as long as they like, but I can't give you the whole day long to do this. So I'll have to cut it short. Okay. So I assume that you all have had something. Okay. Now, some of you, so Hada, you want to show us what's your answer like? What's your paper like? No? Too shy? Okay, I won't put you on the spot, okay? Some of you, your search may be looking like this, right? Well, if you have done this, it's not wrong, it's correct, right? Because actually, oh, well done. There are many solutions to this, right? Because from the circle, okay, you're gonna walk to lose your skills. Okay, I walk here, then maybe I walk there, right? Because you're walking here, there cannot be a break, right? So you're walking. This one decide to turn left, go up, go down, come back, right? So this is possible. And in fact, this task have many possible solutions. Now, okay, in the stars, if you do this, it means that your executive function is okay, but not very good. What is an example of a very good executive function? You know why this is not so good? Because, well, if you think about walking, how you know that you have, you see this person, he didn't cover this part. And then this part he covers many times, right? As you walk in the field, if you go by, this is random, right? This is random. So there's a high chance that you may end up walking over the same place over and over again. And there's some place that you didn't cover. So this is okay, but it's not the best. Okay, what's a better solution? This. Right? Because if you walk this way, you walk from, you turn left, you go up, you walk down, you walk up, you cover systematically the entire field, you will surely get it because you will cover all grounds, and in fact, you will also not go over the same thing twice. Okay, so if you do this, this is what you call systematic pre-planned search. Somebody who don't just listen and okay, I'll go here, I'll walk here, I'll walk there. Okay, let me see. If I walk here, I got to think about it, right? Now, that part of processing whereby the person listens to the task and then think and plan, that is executive function. It's not the ability to understand the instructions, but the planning part. Okay, so, and this is, again, people differ on this. And children with learning disabilities, it's their planning, their ability to plan and problem solve. That is the one that is causing problems. Okay, so I'm going to show. So again, please don't get saddened if you have the random answer. It means you're still very clever, but maybe you need more practice in pre-planned search. Okay, I'm going to show you how a child, let's call him Ben, 12-year-old boy that I've worked with. Ben is not his real name, but he has a severe learning disability. He has a very severe impairment in executive function, but his IQ is very high. I give him the same task, and after almost 5 minutes, this is what Ben produced. And I asked him again, he understood the instructions, he has no problem understanding it, but this is what he produced. Think about it. What is happening here? This is a boy who can actually, talk well, very creative, and yet when it comes to this task, he becomes almost paralyzed, literally. Okay? The reason is that the tasks that we give have too many options, too many possible answers. Ben cannot decide which is the right one. Do I go left? Do I go right? Do I go center? How do I plan this? Okay. So again, because the executive function is impaired, he becomes paralyzed with just too many options. He cannot problem solve. What do I start first? Where do I go second? Right? And because this is a novel or a new situation, because he has never seen this problem before, right? I'm sure after I give you the answer, if I give the problem again, you know how to do because that's past experience. But for Ben, just like all of you, this is a completely new task. Because it's completely new, your ability to plan and problem solve is tested to the limit. And that's where you can see the struggles of a person, of a child with executive function difficulties. Okay, so this is one aspect of executive function, which is planning, problem solving. Mentioned earlier, executive function is not just one skill, but it's many skills. I want to show you another cognitive skill that relates to executive function. And therefore, let's have another task, okay? I know I'm working you all very hard this morning, right? Okay. Okay, this time you're going to play cards, okay? I'm not gambling. I'm just going to play cards with you, okay? This task, what I want to illustrate from this task is another important executive function skill, which is changing attention, shifting attention, and changing ability to change from one pattern or response to another. Okay, are you ready? This one, you don't have to write anything, just focus on the screen. Okay, this one, I need some volunteers because I need verbal response from some of you so that I can hear. But I cannot hear 200 of you, otherwise this whole thing will crash. Can I have some volunteers, or at least 10 people to unmute themselves? Or maybe Suhaila can help me to unmute 10 people that want
Okay, Prof.
they can participate in this.
All right.
Maybe the winner of our Kahoot test. I know Christina did well. Christina, would you volunteer? Would you unmute yourself? Or maybe thank you, Christina. Who else? Yeah, who was our winner? This is your prize. You get to participate in this role play.
Okay, Prof, can we have those 10 to raise their hand instead? We just choose 10 and then we can unmute them from here.
Okay, I need to hear your voice, or maybe just
can you raise your hand, please, so we can unmute you?
Those who want to volunteer, maybe put a raised hand so that yes, thank you. Okay, Yvonne, thank you. Christina. Who else?
Muhammad Fahmi.
Elmi. Muhammad Shahrir.
Mr. Ikram, can you unmute them?
Yes.
There's 10 of them, yeah, Prof?
Yeah, at least 10.
Lau
at least
Yan
10.
Hong, Lau Yan Yong. Lo Yan Yong here in the chat box. How many more do we need, Abba Mastura, Mr. Ikram?
There's Elmi.
Elmi.
Mina.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we have enough 10 already? Mr. Ikram is currently unmuted. Como. Okay.
Okay.
Oh. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Can we have a sound check first, Prof?
All right.
Testing.
Okay, test.
Wonderful. Okay, good morning. And how are you, participants, volunteers?
Yeah,
Can I hear your wonderful voice, please?
Very good, thank you.
Excellent. Good and energetic, right? Nobody is. Okay, wonderful. Are you ready to play this game?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So pay attention, listen to the instructions, and then follow the instructions carefully. Okay, I'll start now. Okay, I'm going to show you playing cards like this. Okay, some are red and some are black. I need you to say yes or no according to the cards I show. But you must follow this rule. Say yes to red, no to black. Okay? If you see a red card, you say yes. If you see a black card, you say no.
Okay.
Easy enough?
Yep.
Are you ready? Okay, we begin.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
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 Yes.
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 No.
No.
Yes. Yes. No.
Yes.
No.
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 No. Yes. No.
Yes.
Oh, well done. Okay. Some people a bit breathless, but I think you get there. So I think all of you, you managed to do that task very well. Okay, good. So you're able to follow the instructions and follow the rule. Okay, we're going to do it another time. This time, I'm going to show the cards again, red and black again. And you are also going to say yes and no. But this time, it's a different rule. Okay, this time, you say yes if the card is the same color as the one before. You say no if the card is a different color from the one before. Okay, yes if it's the same color as before, no if it's a different color from before. Understand? Are you ready?
Okay.
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 Here we go.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
No.
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 Yes. 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 No.
No.
Yes.
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 No.
No. Yes.
No. Yes.
No.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes. No. Yes.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I think you can see. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, the participants. Right?
Thank you.
very much.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So thank you. Excellent participation. So maybe we can mute them so that we can go on to the discussion. Okay. So I think you can see how much you struggle a little bit, the second one, right? So even though the task is similar, you struggle because suddenly there is a change in something that is familiar to unfamiliar. That is again the part of the brain that's responsible for changing or shifting your attention from one aspect to another. That is part of executive function. And you find that you struggle a little bit, right? So of course, you understand the instruction, right? You don't have a problem. Initially, when I do a bit slower, you were okay. The second time out, yes, no. And then when I do faster and faster, I heard somebody saying, yes, no, no, yeah, yes, no, right? you self-correct because you were saying it maybe a bit impulsively, but you immediately know, oh, I got it correct, and you self-correct, okay? Self-correction is a sign of a person that have good executive function. In other words, you self-monitor and you self-correct, okay? Children with learning disabilities that have impaired cognitive function, they struggle a lot with the second part of the test. The first one, when it's the first time they can do it, no problem. The second time, they struggle a lot. In fact, some of them, after a while, you know what they do? They simply go back to the first rule. They simply say yes to red, no to black. They give up and just go on what has been a habit before, okay? Because the executive function just give up because it was too much of a new demand. So I hope it gives you a sense of what it feels like to have an executive function impairment for children with learning disabilities, right? So again, and I showed those two examples to show you how actually it is things in here that is partly causing the difficulty, yeah? Okay. So again, what are the problems that we see for these children? We see difficulties in planning, right? Whenever it's a new situation, they have poor response, they don't know what to do, poor impulse control. When they think of something, they just blurt it out, yeah, because they can't control, just like you. Oh yes, no, yeah. You don't have that hand brake. You don't hold the brake first, right? Shifting from attention to another, again, difficulty. Problem solving becomes difficult because problem solving, you need to think through, you need to plan. You can't be impulsive. Repetitive behavior, in other words, once things get difficult, they go back to an old habit, even though it's a new situation. And sometimes difficult to apply the skills that they have learned and generalize it to a new situation, right? So that's why sometimes when you see children with ADHD, for example, like this one, yeah, sometimes they are like this all over the place. But when they are given a structure, or when they are focused on, when there's a physical space like structure, like this boy here, they focus a lot. Because when you zoom in, they hyper-focus when everything else is cut off from them, right? So very often people misunderstand. When they see children with attention difficulties, they say, oh, the child cannot pay attention. Actually, that's not true. The child doesn't have a problem in paying attention, but the child's problem is that he pays attention to too many things at one time. The executive function doesn't focus his attention to the right things at the right time. So in class, as the teacher is talking, they are also hearing the birds outside. They are also seeing the fan moving. They're also seeing what their friends are doing. All of this is competing for their attention and they cannot regulate it. But when they're in a computer, you look at his eyes, zoom in, right? Because the whole visual field is just blocked by that. So they become hyper-focused. So this helps us to understand why some of the behaviors and the inconsistencies that we see children with learning disabilities, okay? Now, I want to go back to a point that was made earlier. So, okay, oh no, we have ADHD, ADD, dyslexia, SLD, specific learning difficulty, dyscalculia, dysgraph, all the kinds of names. So what is a teacher supposed to do? Are we supposed to become psychiatrists now? Diagnose? Actually, my advice, my encouragement for you is to don't worry about the diagnosis. What's more important is that we focus on the areas of need. In class, you can see the behavior issue. From the behavior issue, you look at the needs. Focus what you do based on the needs, rather than be worried about the disability condition. Of course, it's good to have the diagnosis, but you know, even in cities or in Singapore, you don't get the diagnosis immediately, right? There's a waiting list, it costs. Sometimes you refer the child, the parents don't want, it takes a long time to persuade the parents. So does it mean that until his diagnosis, we can't do anything? No, absolutely not. Having a diagnosis is important because it helps you to be more precise. But even if you haven't been diagnosed, you can recognize the symptoms. You can recognize, because you've learned already the characteristics. You can focus on the need and start to do something to help the child. It may not be everything the child needs, but it's something that that can be helpful to the child. I'm going to discuss what the strategies are. So what are the areas of need? So basically, whatever the diagnosis of the disability, think about it in 3 baskets. One is an area of need called speech, language, and literacy. Okay, this is where when you see that the child have problems either in verbal expression, understanding spoken language, maybe articulation is poor, maybe reading accuracy is affected, and maybe spelling and writing is affected. Okay, so one area of need, speech, language, and literacy. Another area of need where it could be social, emotional, or behavioral. How do you see the problems? What are the indications that you can see as a teacher? You see him problems having with peers, difficult to control his anger, his emotion, a lot of anger outbursts. When you give routines, he have difficulty following them. And in social interactions, he always missed out on what people are saying, right? He always become the odd one out. Okay. The third basket is the sensory or the physical. Maybe visual issues. It could be selective hearing, or perhaps coordination issue, right? So if you think about needs in terms of these 3 baskets, then really you don't have to be too worried about the specific diagnosis of the child. For example, a child with dyslexia would have speech and language and literacy needs, but he may also have friendship problems, right? He may also have, because he's frustrated, he may also have anger management issues, okay? And perhaps because he's always disorganized, that you can see in terms of the way in the field, in PE, he is also a bit clumsy. Similarly, a child with ADHD would have behavior issues, paying attention, but because he is not paying attention, he may end up also being a poor reader, because even when you teach reading, he's not picking it up, not because he has a processing, he has a language problem, but because he's not attending to your instruction for reading, right? So again, if you see LD, focus on the question that you should be asking yourself is, okay, I see this child every day, I must observe him. What are the areas of his difficulty? Is it speech and language? Which aspect? Behavioral, emotional, which aspect? Focus your help on the needs, and don't wait for a diagnosis to begin giving help. Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna talk a little bit now, show you a little bit about what are the strategies that you can use, okay, to address the needs. Like I said, literacy language needs, the behavioral needs, these are the 2 areas of need. So, okay, clearly, whether the child is ADD or ADHD or dyslexia, they often have issues in terms of acquiring reading, writing, and literacy, right? Now, there are specific strategies for addressing literacy needs for children with learning disabilities. And the thing to know is that the reason why they often struggle is that, some of the methods that we conventionally use, like, we do shared reading, big book reading, language immersion, studies have shown that that kind of method doesn't work for them. They need a more structured approach. Remember the key search test, where it is very general and global? The child doesn't learn because the executive function is not there. But so for these children, you need to give it a more structured, very explicit approach. Okay, I'm going to show you now a video of a teacher from Singapore that is conducting a specialized literacy intervention that is effective to address children with persistent literacy difficulties. This may be children with dyslexia who even after 2 years of conventional teaching still struggle with reading, or it could be children with ADHD who, because of their behavioral issue or attentional issue, they still don't read as well as their peers. So let's take a look. Okay, give me a minute while I sort myself out on this.
Well, do you need assistance?
No, I'm good.
All right.
I need to get the 2 videos out.
Okay, sure, Paul. Take your time.
Okay, hang on a minute while I struggle a little bit. This is the problem with videos, and technology. We tried it yesterday, it was fine. On the day itself, something happened. Okay, here we go. Okay, so this is a class. This is a specialist remedials class. You see, it's not a big group. Children that get this intervention, you cannot do it in a big group. So these are about 4 or 5 children. All of them have been diagnosed to have dyslexia. They are in their end of primary 2 because the first 2 years they are given the normal reading instruction, which they're not benefit from. So we know that they have been exposed to normal teaching and then not learning well. So that's why they are given a more specialized intervention that to address their literacy needs. Okay.
Class, today we're going to learn 2 vowel teams. Vowel team has 2 vowels which say one sound. AY says A. Watch me. AY, A. 3 times.
AY, A. AY, A. AY, A.
Trace on the table 3 times.
AY, A. AY, A. AY, A.
Vowel team AY says one sound. So I am going to write AY in one cell of the grid chart because it says one sound. Plus, watch me blend and read this word. A, A, A. D. A, day. Day. There are 7 days in a week. What day is it today? Next. Now let's read together. I want you to blend and read. Class? Good. Blend and read. May. May, you use may when you want to ask permission. May I go to the toilet, please? Next one. Blend and read. Good. Stay with me for a little while longer, please. Okay. Now, you read on your own. Principal Anisha, are you ready? Air. says A. A-Y, A. Principal. Can we blend and read again? Sorry? Let's blend. A. K. K means happy. Principal Anisha looks very beautiful when she's gay and happy. Next. Captain Ani.
A.
Lay. Captain Ani lay on his bed to rest. Okay. Boss Afin, are you ready?
Yes.
Blend and read. Good. Play. The students love to play the snap game. Next, we're going to do the second vowel T. AI has the same sound as AY. AI says A. Class? Trace 3 times on the table, please. Good. Vowel team AI says one sound. I'm going to write AI in one cell of the grid chart because it says one sound. Watch me read and blend. A. In. Rain. Yes. Negu team likes to play in the rain. Let's read together. Blend and read. Yes. Next. Boss Safi. Blend and read. Very good. Good. Rail. Railway. My grandfather used to drive.
Okay, I hope that gives you a bit of a sensing as to the approach. Okay, now she's obviously teaching the basic blocks of literacy for English, right? And you know, in English phonology, one of the difficult things is actually that she uses the word vowel teams. The technical term is diphthongs, right? Diphthongs. What are diphthongs? Two vowels combined, A and A. And the challenge in English is that E and I, A and Y is A, right? A and I is also A, right? So can you see the approach? She doesn't teach whole word. She is very clear, right? And she teaches, and she actually she teaches the children the concept. She doesn't use the technical linguistic term. She doesn't say diphthongs. What term does she use? Vowel teams, right? And then she uses the grid to tell them vowel teams are two sound, two vowels make one sound. They are like a team. They make one sound. And you notice there is one session, she teach them two diphthongs. She deliberately teach two diphthongs that has different letters but same sound so that the children can see the contrast. Can you see how explicit it is? How discrete it is? Clear scope and sequence? How much repetition is this? But at the same time, can you see that this is when you see the teacher, you can say this teacher means business, yeah? She is not out to play. She knows exactly what she wants to say, how she wants to say, and what response she wants from the children. And she doesn't say, who wants to do it? She calls them out because she wants to make sure she hears every child responding to her question. She wants to know where every child is. At the same time, what I really like about Madam Tutik is that she has a cute way of giving them nice names. So she let the children choose, today what you're going to be. One say, I'm going to be boss. Then he calls them, okay, boss Faiz. Today you're boss Faiz. The other one, the girl say, I want to be principal today. Okay, today I'm principal. So she calls them today, or principal so-and-so, boss so-and-so, captain so-and-so. It's a way to actually dignify the children, right? Because she knows that, these are children who are 9 years old and still struggling with basic sounds. So this is just a simple way of raising the dignity, but at the same time, really meaning business when she wants him to teach the child. So again, I would need a whole week to actually conduct a training just on the methodology, right? So we're not going to go through, but I just wanted to give you a flavor just to illustrate the fact that it is this kind of rigor and evidence approach that can really help children with persistent literacy difficulties, regardless of whether they have diagnosed as dyslexia, ADHD, or specific language impairment. It works for all diagnoses, yeah? If it's done well, if it's done correctly. So let's carry on with our slides. Okay. So yeah, so again, the 5 key things, the 5 key ingredients is that explicit teaching, very clear, very structured, right? You can see a multi-sensory. She says it, she writes it, the children write in the air, the children write on the ground, and obviously she used the same method over and over again such that the children understand the strategy. She doesn't just say, okay, you practice. She guides them how to practice, right? And of course, she guides them in the application. When she teaches the sound, she teaches the word, she uses it in a sentence so that the children understand, there's meaning. So they're not just learning sounds out of context. They understand how to use the sounds in a sentence or in their daily communication. Yep. So for children with learning disabilities, of course, this is to address basic literacy. And it is, of course, important for learning English. But don't forget, literacy is not just for your English language and comprehension. Is there literacy in maths? Of course there is, right? If you can't read, can you do problem sums? Of course you can't. So even if a child is good in maths, but if you don't have good literacy, you're going to struggle with some of the maths problems. Similarly with science, you may be very good, systematic, scientific thinker, but if your understanding of vocabulary in science is impaired, you're not going to do as well in science. So in addition to basic reading, like what in the video you've seen, we also need to teach them words that comes from specific subject, words from math. So in other words, when you do a literacy intervention, don't just use words from the English books or the reading books. Deliberately use words that they will see in maths books. Divide, multiply, difference, right? Use words that they're going to find out from the science books, because the science teacher may not have the time to teach reading, right? The math teacher is not going to have the time to help kids to learn how to read the words that they're going to encounter in maths. So the specialized literacy intervention needs to be also be subject specific. And of course, in Southeast Asia, we have the other challenge, right? This is literacy in English. What about literacy in Malay, in Thai, in Tagalog, in Bahasa? At least for language like Malay, and I believe in Tagalog, it is also alphabetic, correct? As a script. But when you are using the Thai alphabet, it's no longer just alphabetic. It's a different alphabet together. So it's a completely new challenge for them. And sometimes what I see is, for example, in Singapore, where you have children that learn English and say Chinese, Mandarin, but their dyslexia is recognized in English and they go for the English remediation. So they improve in the English, but their ability to read in Mandarin still lags behind, still suffer because they're not getting the same level of intervention in Mandarin, which in dyslexia, if you provide the intervention in English, it doesn't automatically transfer to Chinese, yeah, because you're talking about a different language system, right? So I think those are the additional challenge for children that are in systems whereby they need to learn 2 languages or more, yeah. So that's for the first basket, which is about literacy and language difficulties. I mentioned the second basket, which is about social, behavioral, emotional. So what are some of the basic strategies that will work regardless of the diagnosis? Visual support. And I know many of you are familiar with this, but many people think, oh, but this one is more for autism. Absolutely not, right? It works for any child that is disorganized, any child that have attention issue, and any child that has difficulty following routines, regardless of the diagnosis. So these are just some examples that you can use as a whole class. And I won't go through this because, again, many of you are familiar. If not, you can actually, I'm sure, go to the internet and loads of examples of that one. So these are some of the reasons why visual supports work, because the visual support actually give a kind of structure to help the child understand instructions, right? They help the child make things more concrete, right? To-do lists, the calendars, things like that. They may also give structure support to help the child understand what to do and what not to do. Okay, they can be aid memoirs for memory, because these children, either because they're paying attention to too many things at the same time, or their mind is so engulfed in basic reading that they can't remember the class rules, they can't remember the instructions. So structure like this help them regardless of the underlying condition. Okay. And when they are a bit old, this is more for the task. So visual structure support doesn't just mean all the visual charts that you use. When you're giving them tasks, things like mind mapping is also a useful strategy. For older students, if you can teach them how to do mind mapping, it is a wonderful tool that would help them to plan. Remember the keyword search? He doesn't know what to do. So a mind mapping, teach them how to do mind mapping. And the thing is that sometimes we tell the children to do mind map, but we don't teach them how to, right? So teach them mind mapping from simple tasks and slowly to become a much bigger task, right? Another way to teach mind mapping is you can start with a story that they have known. Okay, say Cinderella. Everybody knows Cinderella, right? And maybe you've read it to the class. Then what you can do is, okay, you've read Cinderella. Now I want you to draw a storyboard about Cinderella. So the child knows the story and you make the child draw like this. Now you may ask me, what's the point of this? The point of this is to teach the child a strategy called storyboarding, how to create his own structure so that the story makes sense and he can plan his story. Remember, planning, executive function is impaired, right? So that later, the next week, if you give him, today, I'm gonna ask you to write a story about my favorite, a day at the beach. A day at the beach. What do I start first? What do I start last? But if you had taught him storyboarding, I said, look, start by first, do your storyboard. Come up with 6 pictures, draw what happened first, what happened second, and so on. So if the child had practiced converting Cinderella's story into a storyboard, and if you guide him in that, then the next time he wants to come up with his own story, he has the experience of coming up with a storyboard and using it as a structure to create his story. This is how we help children who we know have so many ideas, but just don't have the executive control to put that ideas down in a logical, clear way, right? Okay. Then another part of the behavior, the hyperactivity, right? What do we do? Okay, this is again, they don't know how to organize, they can't organize. We create environmental support that helps them. And I know many teachers do this, right? All the wonderful color-coded files, right? Color-coded boxes. You give them desk organizers like that. The pencil case, don't just give a big pencil case, throw everything inside, okay? Maybe give them a pencil case like that so that everything has its own place. It helps them with structure, right? And for the children that are always fidgeting, one way is to make them sit in the ball. The minute they sit in the ball, they have to balance. So their energy goes there and they can focus more. For older children, sometimes you can do this. Don't get mistaken. I'm not asking you to tie the children to the chair. Okay, please no. This is not tying the children to the chair. Basically, you tie the band there so that the child can shake the leg without disturbing others. Because without this outlet, what does he do? He kick left, kick right, walk all over the place, right? So this is a way to help the child channel the overactivity in ways that doesn't disrupt the class. Okay, so these are just some examples of the environmental supports that you can use. Again, in your free time, you can search the net and look at environmental supports for LD. You can find many examples. Yeah. Now, sometimes people ask me this question. You ask all this structure, the teaching, multisensory, the sitting in a ball, but how long? How long must we do this? Parents especially are very frightened when they hear these strategies. You mean I have to do this for life? He's in primary school. Maybe we can use the visual chart, but you mean when he goes to secondary school, when he goes to university, he must still carry around a visual chart? Maybe I don't want because I don't want him to be too dependent. We can understand the fear, right? We can understand the fear. But actually what I tell parents is you only give the child the structure and support to the level that he needs. Okay. First, if a child cannot swim, you don't throw the child into a deep end, right? You put him in a baby pool. You put the floaters to help him swim. Then once he has gained confidence and competence, slowly you take out the floaters. You put him in a little bit higher pool, let him practice, and before you put him in a big pool. In a similar way, over time, once they have internalized all this control, the child that first need that storyboard will no longer need the storyboard. The child that perhaps need to sit on a ball will know that he can just, if he has a lot of energy, he does do this. He doesn't need to sit on a ball or put the elastic band on his feet, right? The thing you must remember is that for children with disabilities, if you compare them to the peers, very often they need the external support long after other normal children have internalized it. Okay, because young children need all this, right? But as they grow older, they internalize it. Children with LD just takes a little bit more time to internalize, but you must be confident, you must persist. Over time, they can internalize it and can be independent of this external support, right? And if they need, and some children need it even longer, once they go into adolescence and a bit older, they may still need support, but what we can do is we can change the support into something that is perhaps more developmentally appropriate for the age of the child. For example, like this. These are examples of a lot of apps. Nowadays, there's apps on the handphone, on the iPad, many of the visual charts, reminders, structure, mind mapping, you can have it in an app. And that's very dignified, right? Even for a secondary school child or even in college, right? So as they grow older, but my suggestion is when the child is young, you may need to give it concrete, right? Don't get the child too, and some of these apps are also not so easy to do for the younger child. So for the younger child, you start with the concrete, and when they get older, because they have been taught the strategies, it is easier to transit them into perhaps more IT-based kind of structure that will help them. And it is more dignified to be carrying an iPad or a handphone rather than carry your visual charts with you wherever you go, right? This is also another example that you can use for older children. These are reader pens. What you do is, as you glide the pen will digitally read, and then there's a voice that reads it for you. This is especially for older children that have to read a lot of reading, right? And you can also even put it on an earphone so that it doesn't disrupt other children. Now, these are some examples that you can use. However, I want to give you a bit of a caution. Sometimes we see this technology, we get very excited, right? And now, thanks to COVID, now everybody is an expert on online shopping, correct? Even for me, last time I used to go to the market once a week. Nowadays, it's just my handphone. Now I go to the market once a month. Whenever I go to the market, I feel like a celebrity. Oh, hello, we haven't seen you. Everybody's happy to see me because I already go to the market now. Everybody is doing things online. Before you go online and start ordering, because you can go online and order anywhere, be mindful that a lot of these digital devices, you need a lot of tech support on site. In other words, in the same country. Because these break easily and sometimes they go dysfunction. So you may pay quite a lot of money to get it. But if you don't have good tech support where you are living, where the child is, very soon you're going to have a white elephant. Okay. So be mindful. Don't get too excited, right? So which is why I tell you this strategy the last. Okay. The good basic low-tech strategy like the multisensory teaching, the structures, these are good and can even be more effective. Don't think that you only need to go digital to be effective, right? And in some cases, because you know that there's not going to be a after-service support, it may not be something that you want to recommend to do or even you yourself encourage the parents to do. So just be mindful. And there are also new innovations. There are many new innovations in technology now. With computers, many things can be done. This is something called CogMat. Again, you can go online and Google it if you're interested. This is basically a software to train working memory. Remember, working memory is one of the executive function skill. So this is one way. This is a BCI, brain-computer interface. It's a software that was developed in Singapore, Duke and US. And basically, it is a kind of practice that helps the child to focus their attention. Okay, so if you're interested, you can. But again, like I said, these are the things that don't think that this is the only way to do it. If you are in a place, in an environment where this is accessible, good. But even if you don't, there are many other good, basic, low technology strategies that are equally as good. Okay, all right. Let's pause for question and answer.
Great question and answer. Madam Mastura, can you share the Padlet link in the chat box? Okay, so to our participants, I'm pleased to announce that we have launched a Padlet.com. So you can type your questions there as well. And because why? In the chat box, it will disappear later on, right? So in the Padlet, it will remain there for quite some time. So I'll see here. No questions yet, but I do have a question. This is my question to you, Dr. Sharifah. Back to the exercise that we did, right? The field, especially for the kids in the field. In that exercise, yes, we had to we had the time and our brain is, we set our mind to okay, now I have to strategize to look for the keys. But in real life, you know, when you look for something, you tend to go here and there, and would that contradict to what we have actually with the exercise that we have done?
Okay, thank you, Suhal. That's an excellent question, because what you have highlighted is this, and this applies to children with LD as well. When we are in a learning context, right, in a classroom, the classroom is a special place, because in a classroom, the focus is on the learning. And in a classroom, yes, it's not out there, but this is where in a classroom, you as a teacher can control the kind of information that you give to the child and the kind of tasks that allows the child to actually focus on the skills that he needs to learn. So the classroom is a little bit like your baby pool that you learn to swim a little bit before you can learn, before you're thrown in the deep end, okay? Now, why do I say that? I say that because, for example, one of the things when you are, can you imagine if you're thrown in the deep pool before you learn how to swim, what happens? You're anxious, right?
Yeah, you drown.
Before you drown, you panic.
Right.
You're anxious, you get scared, your emotions go high. Okay, this is something that you must know about how the brain works. The emotional part of the brain and the cognitive part of the brain, when one is heightened, the other one goes on lockdown. When your emotions are high and out of control, the thinking part of the brain goes on lockdown. So you cannot access, even though you're a very logical person, your logic goes out of the window when you're panicking, when you're anxious. Okay, when you're stressed, you don't learn well. So similarly, that's why tomorrow we're going to have a lot of discussion about how do we manage anxiety. Because yes, we can have all the educational strategy, all the teaching strategy, but if we don't help them to manage the emotion, when they are faced with a task, the emotion takes over, the distress takes over, and all the good work that we teach, drilling, multisensory, doesn't see the benefit. And that's why sometimes I taught him already, but then still when the exam comes, he doesn't do it. Oh, is it because I'm a bad teacher? Or is it because, Dr. Mariam, your strategy is lousy, it doesn't work? Maybe it's because we just focus on the learning. We forget that in the exam, in the test, everyone's emotions is high. So we need to also teach the child how to address the emotions. And we're going to discuss that in depth tomorrow. Yeah. Thank you, Sohaila. It's an excellent question. Yeah.
There's a question here in the chat box from our participants. For kids who cannot focus because they tend to focus on too many things and not the learning, is it wise to eliminate other elements such as teaching aids or decorations in the classroom?
Okay, good questions. Because, okay, we are in a classroom, right? We're not one-to-one, right? If I'm teaching one-to-one, yes, I can create the classroom that's perfect for one child. What do I do for the class? Okay, you notice in the video that I showed the teacher teaching, everything on the board is purposeful, right? Everything is a teaching element that she has taught. It's not for decoration. Everything is purposeful because that teacher means business. She's communicating to the students. You come to this room, it's business, right? So that's one thing to always remember. So similarly for teachers, of course, we want it to be beautiful, but in a classroom should be purposeful, even if it is beautiful. So that's one guiding principle that I think we teachers need to maintain, right? You may still want to have a beautiful class, but maybe you want to think about, if you have a child with ADHD in the class, think about two things: where you sit the child and where you put your most distracting poster, your most colorful poster. So for example, you may put the poster, don't put the poster behind you where you are talking. You may want to put the poster perhaps a little to the back or to the left, right? One of the things about seating position of children with ADHD or attention difficulties, never mind the condition, is that don't put them at the back of the class. That's the worst position. Unfortunately, how many times have I heard, you're always talking, go sit at the back, go sit at the back, right? Go sit at the back. That is the worst place. Why is that the worst place? Because if the child sits at the back, between the teacher and that child with ADD, every single child is a potential distractor, right? So what do? You sit him in front. At the same time, my advice is, okay, secondly, don't sit him near the window, right? Because window, you see the bird fly, so sit him away from the window, preferably not directly in front, preferably a little bit to the side. Do you know why? Because so that the child is at least have some sense of one person beside him. The child can then look and imitate what the others are doing if he cannot follow. So the best position is in front, a little bit to the left. In front also, he can be right under your nose, so you can see him very well, right? So these are the strategies that you can use for a child if you have an ADHD child in your class, without necessarily turning your classroom into a jail cell or a clinic room that everything is bland, right? So balance it. Yeah, I hope that helps.
Thank you, Doctor. We have here another question. Is it bumping on ball or playing band on leg still helpful for secondary students, hyperactive students? Secondary school hyperactive students, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that question. Sitting on ball may be helpful, however, it may not be developmentally appropriate. You got to understand about the sensitivity of teenagers. You know, teenagers, they have such thin skin. You know about the meaning of thin skin? In Malay, it's called telinga tipis. That means you are very hypersensitive. Nobody is talking about you and you feel everybody is looking at you. Right? They have one pimple in the face and they don't want, they pull their hair down. They don't want to go to school, right? They're so self-conscious, right? Teenagers, right? So we must be mindful of that psychological aspect of teenagers. So knowing that, what do you do? So if you expect everybody not to see it and you are sitting on a ball, it's very embarrassing, isn't it? Right? And then you have other problems. The child might not want to come to school because I'm suddenly like the odd one out. He may be bullied or make fun of, right? So don't do that, right? So for a child with ADHD who is a bit active but a bit bigger, so that's why my suggestion is use this kind of balls and bend when they are a little bit younger so that they can get used to the strategy. So that when they go to secondary school, they can use strategies that's a little bit more subtle. For example, you can have, not in front of the class, you tell this boy, whenever you feel that you need to walk, you give me a signal. I will then ask you to do a task. So for example, as we are talking this, and then say it's a secret code lah. Maybe Suhaila will tell me I will maybe do this. And when I see Suhaila do that, I say, okay, Suhaila, can you please go to the back, take the rubbish bin and empty it. So he gets a chance to go out, do something physical, come back. Right? Is it dignified? Yeah, because it's a task that teacher use, right? And it's not making him feel obvious, right? Like I said, sometimes if they are used to the elastic bands when young, when they are older, they don't need the elastic band. They know how to control just by shaking their legs or twiddling their hands like this, twiddling their pencils like this. It will give the same effect if they have practiced it from young, okay? The other way that you can do, and it's not just for hyperactivity, sometimes praises. We always say, always give praises, right? To motivate. That also needs to be developmentally appropriate. If you are a teacher in a primary school class or maybe younger preschool, if a child does something good, and the teacher says, oh, good job, Faiz. Good job, Anitha. Well done, Krishna. Well done, Ayman. Everybody is happy, right? Yay, right? Imagine if you are in a class of 16-year-old, the child gives the correct answer, and you say, good job, Anitha. How do you think the teenagers will respond? Are they going to like it? No, right? Yes, thank you, Ms. Lee. It's embarrassing, isn't it? So here you are wanting to motivate that child whom you just praised. Good job, well done, good boy. He is crumbling, hoping that the world will swallow him because he's so embarrassed. And chances are when he goes to recess, he's going to be made fun of. The misery continues, okay? So, but at the same time, we know that these children with LD, they need that encouragement and they need it from you as a teacher. So one of the ways that I, again, use is this. Before the class start, you say, okay, so Haila, I know that sometimes when I ask a question, you don't answer because you are too scared, but I give you time. And if you give a right answer, or if you're paying good attention, I will walk up to you, nobody knows, and I will put 3 fingers on your table. When I tap twice, that's my signal to you that you are doing an excellent job and you're doing well. So as a teacher, you teach your class, you observe Suhaila doing well, you walk your class, and when you pass Suhaila, you tap, just put 3 fingers on that and just make eye contact. That child will feel that he's on the top of the world, and yet nobody knows, right? So this is what I mean by using strategies when they are older that is developmentally appropriate, right? And I'm sure you can come up with many other ways to maintain the dignity of the child, the dignity of the adolescent, even while we still want to do effective strategies. So I hope that helps.
That definitely helps, Doctor. Have one more question here. How do we get every student to be involved in the strategies we implement in class? Example, teacher A implements visual support in class, but students aren't interested at all to follow.
Okay. Visual supports work well are needed by some children, not all. Remember I made that statement? When they are young, you know, when you go to a kindergarten class, primary 1, primary 2, the teachers are very good. All the folders are color-coded, right? Things are nice in boxes. Why? Because at that age, whether they have learning disability or not, all these structures are helpful. Okay, but as children grow older, many of them internalize it. So it's okay. So what you do is you keep having it in your class, even though not all children need it. You put there for the children that need it. So if the children have internalized it, then they don't need it, right? So again, don't worry that, you know, what if the, so your visual structure to try to target the specific needs of children with LD. But bear in mind that if the children doesn't need it, then it's okay. This is not meant for them, but you do it as a classroom activity. So the child that doesn't need it will ignore your, will not pay too much attention on your visual charts because he can follow the routines. He has no problem. But for the child that have a problem, that is so needed, that's not necessary for him, right? So again, you need to modify and differentiate. Yeah.
Thank you, Doctor.
Yeah, good questions.
Yeah. There's any more questions? Okay, we have questions from our YouTube and Facebook. Okay, from Padlet here, we have some may categorize dyslexia, dyspraxia, ADHD, etc. as a specific learning difficulty rather than a learning disability. What is the difference between learning difficulty and specific learning difficulty versus learning disability?
Okay, thank you. So you have 3 words there: learning disability, specific learning difficulties, and what's the other?
Learning difficulty. Learning difficulty or specific learning difficulty.
Okay.
Versus learning disability.
Okay, the difference is geographical. If you're in the UK, where I got trained, where I did my master's and my PhD in University College London, in UK, the term used is specific learning difficulties. Dyslexia is specific learning difficulties. Okay. If you take the train from Heathrow, London to New York in US, the same boy will have this different term called learning disabilities. Yeah. So that's what I mean. The difference is purely geographical. Okay. Different terms used by different jurisdictions. So that's why I say sometimes as teachers, and it's so confusing, right? Learning difficulties, learning disabilities, actually, we're talking about the same things. So that's why my encouragement to you is, it's important to understand the concept. If you grasp the concept, then you're not too bothered about the specificities, right? And at the end of the day, whether it's specific learning difficulties, whether it's learning disabilities, whether it's dyslexia or ADHD or what have you, what do you look out for? You look in the classroom, you observe what are the child's areas of need. Does he have a literacy difficulties? Does he have attention difficulties? Does he have emotional regulation difficulties? Your strategy, address the areas of needs. Don't get too worked up or stressed about the specific diagnosis. Yeah.
Okay, doctor. I always thought that learning difficulty referred to like certain subjects. For example, I may have learning difficulty in biology, but overall I don't have learning disability, meaning I'm able to learn, but specifically for biology or at maths, I have difficulty. So that's not right.
No, it could be because, as I said, people can define it any way they want, right? But the thing about learning disabilities that we are talking about today is that it is not, there's a neurobiological basis. Okay, so if you don't have a neurobiological basis and you are not learning your biology as well as you should, maybe the problem is not a learning difficulty, but maybe a teaching difficulty. Maybe you've not had the right biology teacher, right? Or maybe the strategies used by the biology teacher maybe doesn't suit your learning styles, right? Or your area of interest. So that's a different story, which is why remember when we talked about that definition, I made the point that a learning disability, one of the conditions is that it is not because of environmental factor. It's not caused by environmental factor. It's not caused. So poor teaching is, or lack of teaching is an environmental factor. Yeah.
So it has to do with neurological factor.
That is the main cause of it. Yes.
The main cause.
Yeah.
Okay, we have from Padlet, from Aliza Alwi. Is it important to structure an assignment for a college students with LD, for example, ADHD? How do we structure it without giving him too much support, making the work have too much instructor's help? We worry that we may not get to assess his real abilities to complete the task.
Okay, excellent question. Who was it that asked the question?
From Aliza Alwi.
Okay, Aliza, thank you for asking that. Because again, we're talking about the older children, right? And this is one thing that teachers often ask me, oh, Dr. Mariam, you mean I have to give him more time to do the same task? Hey, isn't it not fair? Isn't it not fair with other children, right? So this issue of fairness is an important one. And I think especially as teachers, right? We always have to bear in mind, how do we give help to one child but not give him or her undue advantage over other children, especially when it comes to high stakes testing, like for example, the major exams, right? Okay. So the first thing I want to say is that for us, try to, in your mind, make a difference between the teaching and the testing, okay? Now, for your high stakes major exams, of course, has its own rules, right? But when you're doing your class test, when you're doing your class task, the assignments that you give, your continual assessments, you are in control, right? It's not going to determine, whether he graduates or not. It's just the basic. So one of the things that you can do is give structure that helps without giving the child undue advantage. In other words, more instructions that can improve the quality of the product. Let me give you an example. Say you give an assignment to do an essay, right? An essay, a 4,000 word essay, college level, right? And usually in college, I teach in college, I usually will tell that, okay, this is your assignment. Your assignment is due, what date, right? Okay. What happens to the child with ADHD? Disorganized, and then he will do last minute, right? A good student will do what? Will plan early, will think of the topic and structure and so on. So you give the same task to everybody, give the same deadline to this child with this youngster with ADHD and tell him, look, I know you have problem planning and organizing. So what I will do is everybody gets one deadline. You get 4 deadlines. The first deadline is, I want you to give me your topic title in 1 week's time. Okay. Say your deadline is 4 weeks. You give him 4 deadlines. So the first deadline, you give me your topic. Second deadline, I want to see your structure. You're not marking him. You're not telling him what structure to give. You're not telling him whether it's a good structure or not. You just want to see a structure, right? The third deadline, you want to see the first 3/4 of the essay. And the last deadline, like everybody, submit everything. Are you giving structure? Yes, you are. Is it helpful to the child? Yes, it is. Does it give him undue advantage? What are you testing? Are you testing planning or are you testing essay skills? Right? You're testing essay skills, right? So the help that you give does not give him undue advantage compared to other children. And I'm sure the better students, the one that don't have ADD, they are doing that too. They have internalized the plan. They can do it themselves. But the youngster with ADD, they need all this external support. So you help them by giving them milestones, yeah, or intermediate demands that help him to force himself to go step by step. And that often helps for the children. And there are many other strategies, but that's just an example.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. So next question is from Mahendran from Padlet. How can we define many students who may not have learning difficulties but having issues in focusing and learning in the classroom, especially in mainstream schools?
Thank you. Okay, so again, the majority of children with learning disabilities are in mainstream school. Most of them are. Most of them, like I said, don't have, unless they have an intellectual comorbidity, they have an intellectual disability, then they may require a special education. But for majority of many of children with learning disabilities, they should be in a mainstream school, right? In most places. So the strategy that I've shared today, all of them are examples from a mainstream classroom. Even that class, the teacher teaching, that is a remedial class that is done after school, 45 minutes every day, short time. Now remedial classes like that, you don't, because it's very involved, it's about 30 minutes at the most, 45 minutes. You don't go for too long because it's very involved. It's very demanding for the child. So those are just examples that you should be using within the mainstream class rather than think about special education. And when you think about it, putting visual supports in class, remedial lesson like that, sometimes the child, and I know this for a fact, like for example, I know that from working in SEAMEO, in some countries, they have the challenge of children that have a lot of need, but not because of disabilities. These are children who are migrants, and especially from war-torn countries, right? And I know, for example, Thailand, you have quite a significant number of children who are basically refugee children coming from another country. And these children, they back in their war-torn countries, they didn't go to any school. So the child may be 10, 11, haven't had any instructional input. So what do? Well, the same strategy for dyslexia will work for them. In fact, they may learn faster because they don't have the neurological barrier. So again, if you see children that have a persistent difficulty, use these strategies, it can benefit many children, not just children with specific disabilities like this, yeah?
Okay, Doctor. Prof, here we have probably just a sharing from Christina Anna Anthony. My students still love being praised and they range from 13 to 19 years old. Their emotional age is still behind their biological age. These kids more often than not lack praise at home or elsewhere. Hence, when they get praise, they really cherish it. I love being praised. Does that mean I'm emotional?
No, thank you, Christina. I must really thank you for highlighting that. It tells me a few things. It tells me that, Christina, as a teacher, you're very emotionally attuned to the emotional needs of your child. And that tells me that you're an excellent teacher, just by the fact that you are able to create a classroom where children feel emotionally safe, right? They know that if they come to this class, when the teacher praises them, it is authentic praise. One of the things that make teenagers a bit funny and difficult is that they tend to think that people are being sarcastic when we are not, right? They also have to read into things when they are not, not cool. It's always cool, right? They always want to be cool, too cool for school.
Swag.
Yes, swag, right? Whatever. Chill, right? They want to be all that, yeah. So, but I think, Christina, you clearly have, by the things you do, and perhaps just by your own genuine self, you manage to create a classroom environment where people feel emotionally safe. And when kids feel emotionally safe, all the defenses come down. What are the defenses? I'm too cool to be bothered, right? I'm like, oh, this is not so important. This is so boring for me. These are all the defenses, the mask that teenagers with difficulties put up to hide the fact that they are vulnerable and they want to be acknowledged. Some of them try to act tough, be the clown, right? So I think if you can create a classroom environment that is emotionally safe, that's where some of the strategy that you say, if you praise, everybody celebrates that. Right? But again, you need to have a safe classroom environment before that strategy works. So congratulations to you, Christina. Well done.
Doctor, probably it's also the way we praise the students when they are at that age instead of like good job. Then it could be like, hey, you did great, or something more cool and relevant to them, probably.
Good. Yes, definitely. As I mentioned earlier, find ways that are developmentally appropriate, and you know best, right? You know the culture of your classroom. You know what is the vibe of your classroom.
Yeah. Okay, Prof. Next question from Padlet. In my class, there are 4 students. 3 students are autism and 1 student was hyperactive. How can I teach at the same time?
Oh, congratulations.
The blessed.
Because you're blessed and multiple bonus, 3 with autism and 1 with ADHD. Well, I think one of the things that you need to do is to realize is that okay, on the one hand, you got a lot of things on your hand. Secondly, you have what I call a critical mass. In other words, more than one child that have a similar need. This is where then you can think about doing group-based intervention for those children. So again, as I mentioned earlier, don't think about disability, think about needs. Those 4 children, are all 4 of them struggling with literacy? If they are, then speak to your principal, speak to your year heads. Say, I have these 4 children that have additional needs. Can I give them special remediation after class? Just 30 minutes? Or maybe I can work with another teacher, co-teach, while we do a structured specialized remediation for them. Then at least if I do it once, I can help 4 children at a time. Similarly, you can actually put them in, if you do a kind of visual support, it can be used by more than one child because at least 4 children need them, right? So I think you may have a greater demand, but on the advantage that whatever specific strategy that you use, you are actually benefiting more children at one time because you have 4 children that have the need. Yeah. But of course, again, it depends on how the same they are or how severe they are, right? This all matters, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Next question from Padlet. Okay, this is anonymous. Thank you very much for your excellent lecture. I would like to ask you to elaborate the difference between education for persons with disabilities and education for special need, and you do have definition for both. Second question is, special need or special school can still apply or use this word since UN Convention on Right of Persons with Disabilities mentioned should not use it because meaning seems to discriminate. Okay, this is a different set of questions. So can you address that, Prof?
Okay, I will address the second question because I think the second question seems a little bit clearer to me. I'm not quite sure so much about the first question, so I'll put it at the back burner. I'll come back to it if it's really an important. But I thought the second question is much clearer and an important question, right? So people ask me, so you talk about inclusivity. Does inclusion mean that we have to close down all our special schools? If we have special schools, does it mean that we are discriminating? Okay. Again, I give you the example of the country that I was trained in. I spent a total of about 5 years, different times in the UK, which champions inclusion, right? Correct? Yes? Okay. Yes. Does UK have special schools?
Yes, they do.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Right? And 10 years ago, the proportion of children with special needs in the UK that are in mainstream schools was about 70%. About 70-80% was in mainstream school, another 20-30% in a special school or specialized units.
One moment, please.
Hey, bạn ấy đã speak now, bạn ấy đã chia.
Okay, got it. Sorry, Doctor.
Now, after so many years, can you guess how many percentage of children with special needs in the UK are in mainstream schools? It used to be 70, 80. You know what it is now? Less than 60%. Over the years, the UK education system, parents in UK have realized that, you know, if you just simply put a child in mainstream school, that may appear, mainstreaming a child may not be in the child's best interest. What does inclusion mean? Inclusion means is a process of ensuring that all children get appropriate and quality education. It's a process by which we ensure that all children without discrimination get quality education and appropriate education. For the majority of children with disabilities, that is indeed being in the mainstream classroom with their peers, because they can learn in the same curriculum, they can have the adaptive skills to range everybody. But for some children where they have complex needs, they have high support needs, their curriculum have to be customized, have to be paced out. For them, meaningful learning needs to be in a customized environment with a customized curriculum. And for you to honor their need for appropriate and quality education, you need to provide them sometimes in an environment that is specialized. UK parents have realized that. And because of that, more and more are telling their authorities, please spend more money and give us good special schools. Because that's where our children will learn. That's where our children will learn the skills to be independent so that when they grow up, they can be fully included in society. What is the point of mainstreaming? Everybody feels happy you so-called have inclusion, but throughout the 10 years of the child's life, he learns nothing. And at the end of 10 years, he has no skills, not independent, cannot have a livelihood, and he is at home all of the time. Where is the quality of life for that at the end of the inclusion? So this is where we're going to discuss it in great detail on the third day, right? Because so again, don't be misled, yeah, by all these debates about mainstreaming or not. At the end of the day, yes, if a child, as much as possible, we want to honor the child's learning and to give the child quality and appropriate education. In Singapore, for example, 80% of children are in mainstream schools. But for the more severe 20%, we provide specialized setting. We call them the SPED schools that have high support structure, intensive support, qualified teachers, infrastructure, facilities, and we spend much more on children in the specialized setting than in the mainstream schools because the children need more. But at the end of it, they acquire the skills that truly will help them to be inclusive in society. So I think we as educators must be clear what is our mission, what is our goal, and don't get too hung up about all this rhetoric, because like I said, I purposely give the example of UK because sometimes people from certain countries come to Asian and criticize, right, our special schools. But maybe then ask them back, why is it that in some countries who have been the champion of inclusion, the number of children that is mainstream actually don't get better but get less? Because parents know they want quality teaching. They realize that quality teaching will help the child more rather than just be put into mainstream, but the child is not getting the quality teaching and learning that he wants. Okay. I hope that helps you to frame yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Doctor. I'm sure all of us can deeply connect to that content, Doctor. So next question, can a child with autism be included in the class with student with LD?
Yeah, the answer to that is it really depends. Autism, okay. Like I said, I also teach on autism and it takes a whole semester, right? You have now masters in autism. whole master's course. Autism is wide spectrum. Yeah. At one end, you have very competent, intelligent, able people who can certainly learn well and excel in a mainstream environment. At the other extreme, you have children that do not have language, severely impaired, high sensory issue. Never mind the learning. When they go into a mainstream classroom, just the sound and the light, they will have a meltdown. They can't cope with the sensory stimulus. And of course, everything else in between. So really for children with autism, you really need to look at the child as an individual. Some children can and do succeed, be able to have his or her needs met in the mainstream classroom. Some children really need a very specialized environment. Some children at the earlier years, primary school, they need a structured support, but over time they develop the skills, then they can transit into a mainstream classroom. Some children, they may need a more structured support even for throughout their education career. So again, it's very much individualized when it comes to autism.
Okay, Dr. Sharifah.
Okay.
Do we have time for more questions, or do you have other activity?
I actually have one more segment. I thought maybe I can go through that segment before, because that's a necessary thing to help for the activity after lunch. So I'll go through that, and if we have time, then we can take some more questions. Yeah.
Okay, Prof.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. So for this segment, I want to talk about the ecological framework. I mentioned in the beginning that this is the biopsycho. It's also known as the biopsychosocial work, social approach. I say all these words because I know all of you have PhD by Google, so you guys can Google it and look for these keywords. Okay. Right. Especially now, with after lockdown, everybody now expert in all the different databases and the search engine. Okay. This is an approach that is used by many international bodies, especially World Health Organization. Many of their tools now are using this ecological framework to help us understand. So, and I find this very helpful for us in order to understand how we can meet the holistic needs of a child. And I find that other than being a framework and an approach that is really anchored in a sound evidence-based research, I find that this approach really sits well within the Asian value system that we have. And it's for these two reasons that I want to share this. It comes from stems from the theory of Bronfenbrenner. Again, if you're interested, Google him. There's so many articles on him. The more academic among you may want to even read his actual theory. But this is a nice visual support to help you unpack the theory of Bronfenbrenner's ecological theory. In a nutshell, it says Bronfenbrenner focused on how the child's learning is an interaction of the child and his context. The child and his context. The key value of Bronfenbrenner's theory is that he doesn't just say context. Everybody knows context is important, right? Who doesn't know that? Of course, context matters. The thing about Bronfenbrenner is that he is very specific in describing the context. He is very precise in outlining the different layers of the environment and context and how each impact the child. And that is the power of the Bronfenbrenner's ecological theory. And we know as teachers, for any theory to be useful, the more specific a theory is, the more helpful it is. So basically, this is the child. Bronfenbrenner describes different systems that impacts the child. Okay, and I will unpack each system at one time. Don't get that, of course, this being a theory, he has very technical term for each of the environment, each of the system. But it's more important to know what the systems means rather than just the name. So there are 4 systems. First, you see the child. When you see the child, it's not a system, it's not environment, but it's within child factor. There's the attributes within the child. So the first system around the child is what he calls the micro system. This is the activities and roles that the child experiences face to face with the people around him. So the micro system of the child includes his immediate family, the teachers that teaches him, the friends that he interacts with and play with at home and in schools. So the people, the social environment that have face-to-face interaction with the child, that's called the micro system. Okay, so how the teacher responds to the child affects learning. How the peers respond to the child affects his learning. How the parents interact with the child affects learning. How the sibling and others interact with the child affects the learning, because they are part of the micro system, micro environment. Okay, and he says the micro system is influenced, is covered by another layer of system that he calls the meso system. What is the meso system? Is the interactions of all the elements within the micro system. So for example, micro system is teacher and child with learning disabilities. But how the teach and another micro system is the friends in class and the child with disabilities. That's micro system. But the relationship between the teacher and other peers without disabilities, that is the meso system. How does that affect the child? If the child sees that the teacher treats other children better, gives more attention to other children, rewards them for success, not for effort, do you think that affects him? Of course it does, right? So context is not just about whether the teacher praised me, but also how the teacher praised other peers. That's your meso system at work. Similarly at home, micro system is the relationship between the teacher, the mother and the child, the father and the child, the elder sister and the child. That's your micro system, how they treat me. But how the parents treat the sister also affects. If the child sees that the parents reward the system every time the sister gets first in class or A, that's not what the parents treat you, but how the parents treat the sister. That's going to affect him, right? So that is the meso system. Okay, right. Then he says outside the meso system, there's another layer system that he calls the exo system. These are things that do not affect the child directly, but affect the people around him. For example, teacher's relationship with the school. If the teacher is a stressed teacher, always got called up from the principal because, you know, how come the parents complain that you don't give enough homework, right? Or if it's a teacher that have a good relationship with other teachers, the teacher have a good support network from other teachers, does that affect how that teacher affects him? Of course it does. Although how the principal treat the teacher, how the principal and the teacher's relationship with other children, with other teachers is not direct to him, that affects the exo system. I'll give you an example of exo system at the home. Say father is a lawyer. He goes to a private school when he was young. His friends' children all go to private school, right? The social circle always talks about how wonderful their children are and which overseas university the child is going to go to. That creates a certain expectation because of the father's exo system. It doesn't have anything to do with the child, but do you think that will affect the child? Yes, it does. Compare that to another parent of a child with disability, whereby he's a hawker. His friends are hawkers. The one that makes the most profit, other one that works the hardest. When he get around with hawker friends, they talk about the prices of things and how to improve sales. And when they talk about their children, hey, when is your child going to be able to help you in your shop, right? They're not going to talk about which foreign university they're going to send their child. Does that the child is not involved in that, but does that affect how the parents' expectation of the child? Yes, because that's the exosystem. Okay. The last is the macro system. These are society's value, laws, and policies, right? For example, and in some society, they have provisions, they have laws to protect special needs, right? So if a teacher does not provide special, or a school does not provide, we don't have it in Singapore, but maybe we have it in the UK. For example, in some places, if the teacher ignores a child with severe disabilities, the parent can take the school to court, right? Some laws allow that. But in some countries, it is not so litigious. There's not so much legal framework. So without that law, so the child's needs can be have different effects on the child. So the teacher may be very hardworking, but if the laws of the land doesn't give the teacher the access to provision, or the system doesn't give access to provision that allows the school to give the adequate help, then that will affect the child. So this is the macro system that he talks about. Okay. So what is the value of this theory? It helps us to think that if we really want to understand a child with learning disabilities, so far we talked about what's in the head, right? Right? What's in the mind, neurobiological. That is one thing. We need to also see the context. And the context has, in his theory, 4 different layers. The microsystem, the people that immediately interact with the child face-to-face. The mesosystem, the quality of interactions of the others around him with themselves, not with him. The social groups that the significant others belong to. And finally, the macro system, the policies and the laws and the traditions in the land. Okay? So I find this helpful because when we look at a child and we ask ourselves, what is it that we can do? There are certain things that we can do as teachers by looking at the within child factors, the way we teach, the visual support, the literacy. But we also need to think about is there anything that we can do to influence the microsystem? Is there anything that we can do to influence the mesosystem or even the exosystem, right? Or at least we must be mindful of sometimes the barriers to the child's learning may not come from the classroom, but these are the systems that is impacting the child. Okay, so I pause a little bit there. Okay, to ask for a question, and I want to give you, maybe to make it more concrete. Okay, I give you a tale of 2 Allens. It's a story lah, yeah. Time for a story before lunchtime. Before lunchtime story. Okay. I have 2 Allens, Alan Tan and Alan K. Both of them are born with a neurological deficit called dyslexia. Okay, they're born. The parents don't know, of course, but they're born that. They both have language delays. Alan Tan, both parents are lawyers. Alan K, both parents are hawkers. Alan Tan, older sister, is in a gifted program in the same school. Doesn't have a learning disability. Alan Tan speaks mainly English at home. Alan K speaks mainly Mandarin at home. Alan Tan does average in most subjects except Mandarin. Sorry, my mistake there. Alan K, he does average except English where he fails. Alan K fails his English, right? Science, okay, maths, good, but English fail. Because of the exosystem of Alan Tan, the social context where his family lives in, the parent have the means to send him to a private psychologist to have him assessed. The private psychologist diagnosed him to have dyslexia. Alan K come from very good parents who are hardworking. So they believe in hard work. So when they see the child struggling, you're not working hard enough. So they do the best that they can. They give extra tuition to him. They ask people around to send him for tuition class, not just for English, but also for Mandarin, because he's Mandarin, he speaks Mandarin at home, he should be very good, he should get an A or an B, you know? So they believe in working hard, so he's put through a lot of extra tuition because they believe in that. Alan Tan, well, he has dyslexia, so that means he has some problem. So, because they're lawyers, right? What they do? They write to the school, to the education authority and say, oh, because of his dyslexia, he cannot learn too many language. Please give him exemption from taking a second language. He can only learn English. Special exemption. But for Alan K, no. How can you not learn your Mandarin? It's your mother tongue. It's the family language. So take extra tuition and learn your mother tongue and learn English as well. Okay. In fact, so because of the different environment, different contexts, you see the different response, right? Alan K, his LD was never diagnosed because everybody, including his parents, thinks that he only needs to work harder. That's all. Because of the different contexts that Alan Tan grows in, he gets the accommodations. He managed to complete his education and enroll in a private college. But what's the effect? Because the expectation is high, because you know your sister in a gifted program, she has a lot of anxiety. As she grows up, he has a lot of anxiety issues, difficulty sleeping, all the mental health issues emerge. Alan K, well, after a time, he dropped out of school. Father said, never mind, just help me in my hawker stall. Yeah. So the same condition within the child, but a different environment, a different ecology, different life outcomes for the child. So that's an example of how we can use the ecological framework to help us unpack and understand how systems and environment affect children's learning, so that we as teachers can be more sensitive, right? So that when we see a child coming from broken home or a low SES home and struggling with reading, true, it may be because he doesn't have home support, but don't be too quick. Don't be too quick to say he doesn't have a disability. Look carefully. Yeah. Similarly, if you see a child that comes from a good home speaking English well, don't assume that the child is not having any difficulties, right? Even though the child may be masking his difficulties. So this is I see the value of an ecological framework. It highlights to us many factors that affects outcomes for students with learning disability within, in addition to the within JAL factors, right? So at the student level, we talk again, as I'm summarizing this, it's looking at the child's own abilities, traits, personalities, cognitive processes. We talked about it previously, right? Executive function, processing, and so on and so forth. At the microsystem, we look at the family, the peers, the teachers that interact with him. The mesosystem, we look at the relationship, people at home, the school, the wider village, the community that he lives in. Exosystem, the social group that his family belongs to. And the macrosystem is the laws, policies, traditions that is in the wider system that sometimes allows, that makes it possible for certain help to be given and certain help to be less accessible. Sometimes the laws of the land are barriers or are facilitators in themselves. Yeah. So every layer of the system could be a barrier or it could be a facilitator. Family can be a facilitating factor, can be a barrier, right? Relationship. If it's a good relationship, like I'm sure the children in Christina's classroom, their relationship with the teacher is a strong facilitating factor. It's a strength. In other classrooms, if the relationship is not so good, the relationship with the teacher can be an added barrier, and so on and so forth. Okay, and in our breakout session, later on after lunch, I've given you a pre-reading. I hope you did it as your bedtime reading last night, the case of Jonko. What we're going to do after lunch is to use the ecological framework to better understand the story of Jonko and identify what are the facilitating factors, what are the barriers to his learning. And from that, we have a discussion about how can we use his strength, the facilitating factors, to help overcome his difficulties and challenges. Okay, but for now, for the last maybe 20 minutes or so, I open for questions.
Thank you, Bro Sharifah. Okay, just want to remind all the participants to please check your email for the materials for the case study. Okay, so you can, in case you missed out on the email sent yesterday, so please check your email for Jungko's story. We look forward to that session. So in the meantime, I'm going to continue with the questions from Padlet. We have, okay, from Anonymous. I am a receiving teacher, not a SPED teacher from senior high school. I am at grade 11 with the situation we have, the COVID situation. Mostly we just give modules assisted by the parents. Okay, we have a big problem accommodating to them, especially we have different disabilities from mild autism, hearing impairment, and mostly learning disabilities in TVL, skills strength. The best way is to communicate with them, with the parents per se, lessening the tasks which they need, talk to their advisors as often as possible. Will that be effective? Not at all, but we still did something for them. Oh, it's more like a rhetoric statement or questions.
Right.
Yeah, we share insights.
Yeah, I think, yeah, thank you. Certainly, yeah. I think when COVID struck, it turned all our world upside down and inside out, right? Last time I remembered before COVID, as teachers, yeah, sometimes we use online learning occasionally. If you're lucky, maybe once a week, right? Once a month, special lessons. But with COVID, you're at home, you have to, right? And again, some places, because of the ecosystem is different, you can have access to computers, right? But we know in some countries where you have rural areas, it's difficult, right? In fact, in some towns, yeah, you can give the family computers, but how about data? Right? If you don't have data, what's the point of computers, right? So there's specific challenges. Actually, if you remember in the beginning, Madam Suhaila, you showed them about the DITEM, is it? The diploma. Maybe at the end of it, you could show that video again, because that module, that resource developed by SEAMEO actually was developed for the crisis situation. In fact, there's one chapter in the resource that specifically talks about using home-based learning or HBL for children with disabilities. So I would urge you to actually go online, and maybe Madam Suhaila can give them the information again. But really, when it comes to crisis situation, as teachers, we must start first with the environment and see what's available. What's available in Singapore may be different from what's available in KL, in Johor, in Jakarta, in Sulawesi, in Thailand. Very, very different. Okay, very, very different. So start with what's available. If you have computers, use computers. If you don't have, well, you can always maybe post or send the materials to the homes for the parents to do. Don't use computers if you think parents are not able to use it, right? And sometimes the materials for learning doesn't have to be the kind that a teacher can use. For example, you could, for example, give a plan, say today, parents, in the morning, I want you to work with your children to make sandwiches for breakfast. Give them the recipe, write it down, and say, right, follow the rest. Ask your child to read the recipe. And that morning, instead of you making the breakfast for the children, let them read it to you, the recipe, let them follow the instruction and prepare breakfast. Your role as a parent is to guide them. Child is making breakfast, but in that activity, what does the child learn or practice? He practiced reading, right? He practiced following instruction. He practiced planning. So activities which are naturally part of the home activity have a higher chance of being successfully implemented by parents. So sometimes choosing, we have to be a little bit careful in terms of choosing the kind of activities that we know parents can do it at home, right? Some of the things that I think some of my colleagues in Singapore do, especially for children with severe needs, instead of coming to school and doing therapy, what they do is the therapist or the teacher do the lesson. And you know, now everybody is a cameraman, right? Videotape, send it to parents. Parents watch and do exactly what they see. That's another way, right? So that the parents can imitate and do what you do, right? Don't expect parents to do very complicated work. They can watch what you do and imitate. That's good enough. Yeah. So you need to manage. And of course, in home-based learning, you may need to reduce a little bit the content because parents just need more time and the home environment may not be as focused as a school environment. So this is some of the things that you can do. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Prof. All right, here you can see the home pan kyo. We have already addressed that questions earlier. Okay, we already addressed this earlier. Prof. Sharifah already addressed your concern, yeah? Okay, so we have here some participants who did not receive the materials. I would like to kindly remind you to check the email that you register in your MOE, okay? Because the email was sent there. Or if not, we have here Mr. Ahmad here is kind enough to share, sorry, Mr. Aiman. Mr. Aiman here is kind enough to share the case study in PDF. Thank you, Mr. Aiman. Okay, so you can download the A1 case study from Mr. Aiman there. Okay. I'll move on to the next question. From Norjan Osman, how can we handle the child who always repeat the negative behavior?
Okay, so I presume this is a child with a kind of a challenging behavior and you want to address it, right? So obviously the conventional method of scolding, nagging, threatening doesn't work, right? Because I think that for some reason, whenever a child misbehaves, the first reaction is to scold, second reaction is to nag, third reaction is to punish. All three don't work, we know that, but we still do it, right? Okay. So again, without going into the details, just briefly how to address the behavior problem. Okay, the one thing that, especially if a particular behavior problem gets repeated over and over again, the first thing you need to spend some time thinking and reflecting as a teacher. And I know this is difficult. I mean, teaching is a hard job, okay? Right? You got to teach, you got to mark, you got to manage your classroom, everything. But if you can, either observe, or sometimes it's good to actually get a colleague who is not teaching when you are teaching to come into class and observe. Of course, you need to have a very good relationship with that teacher, right? To invite him or her into the classroom and say, you know, I have this kid, he keeps doing the same thing. Can you be my second eye? Not to manage him, but observe. And is there any pattern in the behavior that you are able to see through your observation? Because I'm so busy teaching that I can't see it. Okay, so ask a friend, a colleague who's friendly and comfortable with you to be your second eye and observe the child during the class. The reason for that is that the first step is for you to understand, is there a function to that behavior? In other words, usually most of the time, regardless of how we feel, a child doesn't misbehave as a personal attack to the teacher. Okay, the child is not out to get you. Okay, although sometimes it feels like that, right? Purposely want to make my blood boil. Usually it's not, right? In most situations, it's not. So sometimes the misbehavior, whether it's shouting, screaming, crying, or often, there might be an underlying function to that behavior. For example, sometimes when the child gets overwhelmed say child with autism, they get overwhelmed, they get meltdown. So the function of the misbehavior, hand flapping, rocking, banging down, biting, is because the child needs a sensory input to modulate sensory impulses that is out of control. So the function of the challenging behavior, it has a sensory function. The child is overwhelmed by the senses around him. So that's one function, one possible underlying function of a misbehavior. Sometimes the function of the, and this is in fact more common, the function of the challenging behavior is communication. The child doesn't have the language, the sophistication to tell you how he feels, his struggles, and what he needs. So he shouts. He doesn't have the language nor the confidence to tell you that he needs help. So he keeps it until it gets overwhelming and he shouts. Okay. So the first is to understand the functions of the behavior. Okay. So, and again, that's just to give you some example. There are many other functions, but just give you some example. Once you have some understanding, then you can use a method that I like to teach teachers. It's called PTR. What are the letters? PTR. What does it stand for? 1, prevent. T, teach. R, reinforce. Prevent, teach, reinforce. So you need to understand the underlying, the cause of the function of the behavior. So for example, for the child that you see that whenever he gets the difficult behavior of, stimming, banging, happens when maybe after 2 hours being in a noisy classroom, or 3, this is why you need to observe. Or he behaves like that when we are in the school hall and the field, because the sensory input is just uncontrollable. He behaves every time, every week, go to the school hall, he gets up, he melts down. Well, maybe it's a sensory input. So if you know that, you prevent. How do you prevent? Well, then if you know that he will melt down after every 1 or 2 hours, before that, give him a class break. Bring him to another room, a quiet room, to quiet down, calm down after 1 hour of class. Don't wait until he melts, because you know by the pattern. By 2 hours, boom, he melts down. So you do it for 2 hours. Before he melts down, after 1 hour, John, I want to give you you can go into the quiet room by yourself. You work on your own. It could be a library, it could whatever. If you need somebody to be with him, to watch over him, fine. But that's how you prevent. Yeah. That's the P. The teach. You may want to teach him over time, especially if he is he has good cognitive ability. Teach him to monitor his own sense of distress. Okay, John, sometimes when you remember yesterday, you were like screaming and shouting. What happens before? Is it because you find that it's too noisy? Okay, the next time if you find that the classroom is too noisy, or the classroom has too many movements, and you get a headache and your heartbeat is hot. So notice all that. If you do that, you just raise your hand and say, teacher, I need my quiet room. You teach him to monitor his own level of sensory overload, and then request to go for the quiet room so that he can de-escalate. So prevent first by giving him the opportunity to quiet down. That means he follow your instruction, quiet down. Then over time you teach him. And the third is reinforce. What does it mean? After you teach him how to self-monitor, if the next day he raises his hand and say, teacher, I need to quiet down, and you allow him, and because of that, he avoids a meltdown, when he comes back, fantastic job, John. Because you did it well, you can have your preferred activity after lunch. You can have an extra class, extra time of playing your favorite game on the computer. You reinforce, you reward him for the fact that he's able to use the strategies that you teach. So PTR, that's just an example. We can have many examples. And again, like I said, PTR is a whole module on itself, right? Because it depends on the child, the condition, the age, and things like that. Yeah. But I hope that gives you a sensing of what you can do. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Prof. Let's see if we have more questions. Can we? Okay. Will it be okay if we take a break now, but we'll come back at 1:45? Would that be okay with the participants here?
Is that okay? We have an earlier break. I'm sure all of you are those of you who are not fasting have a
Yes, we are hungry, but we can't eat.
Yeah, those of you who are fasting like me will have maybe a time to quieten down a little bit, right? Refresh ourselves, meditate a little bit, reflect for everybody also.
Okay,
Then maybe
so
we can
most of
start.
them,
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll start at 1:45. What time is Zohor prayer in Singapore, Bro?
Right now it's about 1:15, I think, thereabouts.
Okay. Almost like here
Yeah.
in Malaysia. Okay then. Okay, we'll come back. Yeah, betul, Cik Ismail. We come back at 1:45. Okay, in the meantime, I must say on behalf of all the participants here, we thoroughly enjoy your presentation, Prof. Your delivery was so engaging and lost track of time. And to name a few on your Bronfenbrenner ecological system theory and the PTR, and many more were definitely mind-boggling. So thank you so much for enlightening us and stimulating us in your presentation, Prof. So I'll see you later at 1:45.
Yes, and for those of you who haven't read Jongko's story, please read the story, right? While you have lunch or while you wait for your Zohor, okay? All right.
Thank you, Prof.
Okay,
I'll
bye-bye.
see you later.
See you later.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, to participants, we have already attached here. Okay, Mr. Aiman is already attached here. Puan Harisha, Puan Mastura already attached the case study for you to download and read. Okay, there is no attendance form, Miss Nurul Farahi. We take your attendance manually based on the name on the screen. Okay, so full attendance will be for 3 days. Then we'll give the evaluation form where you have to fill up, and that will entitle you to receive the certificate of participation. Right, thank you, Prof. Thanks, Prof. Thank you, Prof. Thanks so much, Prof. Okay. Definitely a great session. Yes, we'll be back later before. Oh, okay, great. Okay, you can come back earlier as well. Okay, and to our viewers on YouTube and Facebook, I would like to thank you for your time and thank you for joining us, and thanks for Professor Dr. Sharifah Maria Al-Junaid for the session. And for the 1:45 session onwards, that session is only for our close participants in Zoom who are invited by the MOE. Okay, we have our viewers here on Facebook and YouTube who asked if they can join in Zoom. I'm so sorry. This is a rather close training session, so it's only for the MOE teachers who were nominated by their respective MOEs. You may join us again tomorrow on our YouTube and Facebook. And please do so. Tomorrow we'll start at 9 o'clock Malaysia time. We'll start our live streaming sessions on Facebook and YouTube at 9 o'clock in the morning. So I'll see you tomorrow. And thank you for tuning in. See you for Facebook and YouTube Live. Thank you. And for our participants in Zoom, all right, thank you, Prof. Maria and Mr. Thank you, Mr. Aiman. Thank you, yeah. Okay, enjoy your break. I'll see you later.